Recording. Welcome everyone to another episode of Gripsport Latino. Today, we are meeting Mr. Matt Cannon, the founder of Cannon Powerworks. It's the first time we are putting a face to the name personally. How are you today, Matt?
I'm doing really well.
Really nice. I want to start with the classic starting question of the podcast. Tell me, Matt, who is Matt Cannon?
Who is Matt Cannon? I'm still trying to find out. I don't know. I guess I live in Minnesota. That's where the business is based. Been here quite a while. Moved here to go to college, and that's where I met my wife, Christy, who also co-founded Cannon Powerworks. It's something we do together. And then yeah, I stayed in Minnesota. I've been here ever since. This was not my primary job for a really long time, but now it is.
It is. That was my next question. That is Cannon Powerworks like your main source, or did you have like multiple jobs? I was wondering.
Yeah, I went to college and got a Bachelor of Arts in English, and then immediately didn't use it.
Okay.
It didn't even occur to me. Looking back, I can't even explain it. I just graduated and then was working at a credit union at the time, and just thought well, I guess I'll go full time at the credit union. It didn't even occur to me to go look for a job in the career that I just got, or the degree that I just got. So I was working at a credit union, kind of stuck with banks, eventually got in with Wells Fargo and worked with Wells Fargo for about maybe close to 15 years, underwriting mortgages. And that was my primary job. It was about 2012, I guess, that we started Cannon Powerworks, and it was a very nights and weekends, small thing, where we slowly brought in more products, slowly added a couple more services, and just the customer base just kind of kept growing to where 2020 rolls around. It's the pandemic. I'm still at Wells Fargo and just sick of it. Just ready to make some kind of change. Didn't really know what. Cannon Powerworks had been picking up for quite a few years, so it was just kind of a chance to say maybe let's try this full time and see where it goes, and it's worked out great. So so that's kind of it is full time now since about 2020 when I quit Wells Fargo. But until then, yeah, it was a side hustle. We were just doing it. We were fitting it in between. We both had other jobs. We had 3 kids. That were when we started it, they were only the oldest was 6. So it was a lot. It was a lot to fit in.
Really nice, Matt. And about your, let's say, physical performance, I want to know your height, weight, and your age.
Okay, I am 5'10", still kind of. I feel like I might have dropped a bit under as I get older. I'm 45. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm almost 45. It's my birthday in February, so I'll be 45. And weight, I hang around 160, 165.
Okay.
I'm kind of used to being one of the smaller guys in the sport.
Yeah. And there's a question about it. They recently asked me on Instagram, but we are going to go deeper into that later.
Sounds good.
Matt, growing up, did you practice sports?
Yeah, I played basketball mainly. That was my big thing. We moved around a lot. When early on, we were out in Vancouver, Washington. We moved to Illinois at one point. I did a lot of my teenage years in Illinois, right during Michael Jordan's heyday with the Chicago Bulls. So for a teenager in near Chicago who loved basketball, there was no better place on earth to be. So I just lived and breathed basketball all through the 90s. And then we moved to South Dakota, which I love. I love South Dakota. My parents are still there. I love the Black Hills. We visit the Black Hills a couple times a year to see them. But they don't have a sports team. So then it's just like I kind of played local basketball, and I've always been really fond of basketball. I like running. I haven't done a lot lately. I should probably get on that. But those are the sports I've mostly been into. I've never really, until I got into grip, I didn't really do any kind of like focused strength training at all. It was all basketball all the time.
Perfect. So, how did you discover Gripsport?
Yeah, it's kind of a good story too. So my wife is a power lifter. Christy's a power lifter. She has Minnesota state records in the USAPL Federation. She's a national judge as well. So she's traveled around to USAPL, USA powerlifting competitions around the nation. But she was really active on another online forum called Dave Draper's Iron Online. And it doesn't exist anymore. That's kind of sad. It's a forum that kind of fell up the, as social media channels got more popular, it just didn't make sense for them to have the forum anymore. And also Dave Draper has since passed away. Do you know that name, Dave Draper?
Yes, from Pumping Iron, I remember him.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I usually describe him, is like any picture you've probably seen of like Arnold Schwarzenegger training. Dave Draper is usually also in there somewhere. Like he was kind of a generation, yeah, he's kind of a generation ahead of him. I think he was a little older than him. But anyway, so here's where that ties in. We went to he would hold a bash. I don't think it was every year, but it was every so often. And he would hold like a party somewhere in the nation and have speakers. And it was kind of like it was kind of like a seminar, but you could also like weightlift with other people who were interested. So Christy was real tied in with them, and he had a bash in Santa Cruz, California, where he was from. So we went out there in 2005 to go to that, Santa Cruz, California. And just one of the nights we were there, a guy brought grippers, some Iron Mine grippers to, like, we were all just kind of sitting by the pool, and he just brought them and kind of threw them on the table. So everybody's like going after them, trying them. And I just, I picked one up and I'm like, how does this work? And I tried it. I had kind of a nice like speed for it, like some explosive quickness for it. And just based on everybody else's reaction at the table, they were just like, you should train with these. Like most of us, I think I closed a number 1 just right off the bat that was at the table there, could not close a 2. Shortly after that, found the grip board and got in at the grip board. Just started learning about the sport, bought a couple grippers and then was off and running from there. So that was about probably 2006 at this point.
Oh, it's a while ago. And after the grippers, which were the first grip tools that you managed to put your hands on?
Yeah, I've never had a very large collection of equipment. Even grippers, it surprises people. Like this is not my personal collection.
Those are for sale.
Yeah, this is inventory. But my personal collection of grippers is about 12. And that fluctuates. I don't even use all 12 of those. And some have come and gone just where they served a purpose before and don't now. I've got a few blobs. I have quite a bit of stuff that I made myself. Probably 80% of the stuff I ever trained on was just homemade stuff. A wooden pinch block. That was one of the first things I made. I still have it. Just a kind of like a Iron Mine Blockbuster type pinch block. It was really just 2 2x4s screwed together with an eye hook in it. So I would train with that kind of stuff. I always really liked hub lifts. So early on, I sought out, they're not even that nice, but they work really well. The Hampton plates that are deep dish and have a nice hub on them. I got some of those. And so I could train with those. That's some of the equipment that I've had the longest. And I don't have a lot of equipment. It was because my focus, like once I got into the stuff, it was grippers. Like that was, I wasn't even really doing like other training at that point. Like I got to the point where at one point I could pretty much close any 3, but I couldn't bench 180 pounds. Like it was my sole focus was just what's the next gripper? What's the next gripper?
I understand. And which blobs do you have in your collection?
Now I've got maybe like 6 or 7 of them now. A couple at 50 pounds, nothing over that because I've never lifted. I have a Blob 50 that Gordon V at the board used to make. And I've never lifted it. That's still like something that's kind of on my list of stuff I'd like to do eventually. But so I think my lightest is 30 or 35. So I've got a few between like 35 and 50.
Okay, nice. And any inch implement in your collection, like inch dumbbell style?
No, inch dumbbell style, yes. Nothing that large though. I have recently I got from Alan on the grip board. It was nice to meet him too. He was nearby in the next state, Wisconsin. And he sold 2 of the I might pronounce this wrong, Shalani dumbbells. Have you heard of those?
Yes.
Yeah. He was selling 2 of those, one at 100 and 125. And I figured I could probably lift the 100 and that the 125 would be a challenge for me. And that's right where they landed. I can lift the 100. I'm still working on the 125. I could be a lot more focused on that. I've been missing a lot of workouts lately.
Yeah, it's hard to work out having responsibilities like job, family. Yes, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to like, it's one of those things where like, if it's important to you, you'll make time. So like, I feel like I'm dropping the ball. I know I could fit it in. I don't really have good excuses, but I'm missing a lot of workouts right now.
Matt, I want to jump right into questions from the audience because they made
Yeah.
a lot of questions. I must
Yeah, I'm
say,
surprised how long that list was.
yeah, it was many pages. I wanted to tell you that there are like 2 interviews where the audience made almost all the questions. The first
Okay.
one was Nathan, and
Yeah.
the second one is you.
Okay.
It's like yeah, many
People
questions from
want to
the audience.
know.
Well, the first one is Rob Vintage Weights. Have you heard of him? His
Yeah, I know him.
channel.
Yeah. I just
Uh,
texted Rob this week because there's an auction. There's an auction website that I follow that's local auctions, and there were these cool looking, like smaller, like maybe 20-pound globe dumbbells that showed up in there. So I texted the photo to Rob, and I'm like, "You recognize anything here? Like, is this a chance to get something?" And he gave some good advice. So yeah, I just reached out to him this week.
nice. He wants to know what's the first tetting gripper that you ever possessed.
It was I got 2 at the same time. And it was also the first time I met Warren Teddy. So he was local to St. Paul, Minnesota, which is, very nearby where I am. So I had found his phone number. This is, way before Cannon Powerworks, probably around 2006. And went out to his shop in St. Paul and met him and picked up a Supermaster and an Elite. Because I felt like Grandmaster was overlap with like a number 3 that I already had. So I was kind of trying to fill a gap on both sides in the number 3. And I wasn't very close, to closing those grippers at this point. This is probably around the time I'm closing a 2, 2.5 didn't exist. So I was after that Supermaster that was just like something in between a 2 and a 3. Yeah, that was an interesting meeting with Warren.
In that era, Captains of Crush was like single stamp or double stamp. How did they look?
This was current iteration. So this was 2006, which is around the start. It basically is the start. 2006 is the last update that Iron Mind has made to their grippers. So it's the current. What I got at that time would have been the current, iteration of their trade dress, like the Great Spring, the GR8 Shiny Spring, and then the Captains of Crush bands, and then COC on the end of the handles with the number.
Perfect. I want to know, Matt, which gripper certifications do you have?
I really just have one. I'm Match Monster level 1 for the, the classic, certification that, kind of, I'm also kind of sad to see it change. But it kind of had to happen. But yeah, I'm on that level 1 list. Still the lightest person to do it. I guess at this point we'll be locked in as the lightest person that did it by quite a bit, actually. I think the next person is a good like 20, 25 pounds more than me.
So which was your body weight when you certified on the number 1 on the Match Monster level 1?
Around where I am now, like 160 to 165.
Wow,
Yeah.
nice. And do you count the level 0 as a certification or not?
Sure. So I've got 2. I just doubled the number of certifications I have.
You can count as 2, because I always here in Chile I say, hey, I have 1 certification, level 0.
Yeah,
So
I'll out myself here, actually. So I remember at the time, so I borrowed a number 3 to do the level 0 certification because I could not close my own number 3, like the one that I bought that was still hanging there, and I hated it. I just felt like rating grippers wasn't really a thing yet, but I just felt like why can't I close this one? So I borrowed a number 3 to get the level 0, the MMO certification.
yes.
And for like the rest of time that bugged me. So like it just like fueled this fire in me that like, okay, now I gotta prove myself. Like if I don't get level 1, I'm gonna feel like I'm gonna feel bad about this. So it just like lit a fire under me even more to like make sure that I trained hard and locked in the number 1 or the level 1. And I went on to be able to close a lot of different number 3s. So I feel like I got there in my mind. I could move past that. But that I did certify level 0. I got in on a different number 3 than my own. I couldn't close my own.
I understand. I have a question from Mr. Chas Strange.
Yeah.
It's a guy who's really into grippers.
I like him.
He wants me to ask him about the time he beat Adam Glass in a grip contest.
Yeah, so this is not as good of a story as it should be. It's kind of a George Costanza moment for me. From Seinfeld. You kind of tell the story like, the sea was angry that day, my friends. So we're at the contest. It's a leg of David Horn's like World of Grip series. And it was 4 events, and I don't even remember what they were at this point, but I know 2-hand pinch was in there, and then I know there were 2 grip tops lifts in there. Oh, and then Vulcan was the 4th event. So right away, I think I want to say Vulcan was first, and I surprised myself with a respectable close there. And then whenever 2-hand pinch was, that's where the problem came in for Adam. He bombed his opener. So without a total, like he kind of took himself out of the running. So that's the asterisk here. The contest goes on. I did really well on the grip tops events because at that point with Adam kind of out of the running for that, and we're just talking this one leg here, this local contest. Chris Matheson was also there, who's he's certified captain of Crush, big dude. He crushed me on the Vulcan and 2-hand pinch, but then I beat him on the 2 fiddly little grip tops lifts. Like those just suit, like key pinch movement has always just kind of suited me. And I beat him by more on those than he beat me on those other 2 heavier lifts. So it allowed me to take the contest with Adam out of the running. But that's the asterisk that when you put that star on this, in our solar system, that's an asterisk the size of the sun. That he really beat. I didn't beat him. He was kind of out. But I still like telling the story. And that day I was a marine biologist. That's more the Seinfeld quote, but that's kind of what happened there. And I technically came in first, but maybe not as good of a story as Chaz was hoping for.
Well, speaking about good stories, I wanted to know the very beginning of Cannon Powerworks, which is the creation of your company. How did you
Yeah,
start it?
in a way, this is kind of Wade Gillingham's fault. Whether he
Oh,
knows it directly or not. So he was running the Gripper Superstore. Do you remember that? Were you around for that?
I think no, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so Wade Gillingham had a store called the Gripper Superstore, and it was,
Okay.
similar to what Cannon Powerworks is doing now, just in the sense that it was like he brought in like all the different brands and was selling them all out of one place, the Gripper Superstore. So
Wait,
you,
was it a page on Facebook? Maybe. I think I saw that maybe.
it was its own website. You could just go to Gripper
Oh,
Superstore and buy the stuff. So he had, Tedding, Baraban, Iron Mine. I think he sold Atom Grips for a little while they were out. He might have sold Fat Bastard for a little while they were out. So same idea, like let's bring all the grippers into one place and then you buy from one place and pay shipping. Then he came out with Gillingham High Performance, right? The GHP grippers that we all love.
yes.
And suddenly I believe he had to make a decision where it was kind of what do I have time for here, or like what's possible here? Do I want to put energy into my own brand, or do I want to like keep this store the way it is? And whatever his motivations were, he went towards like doing Gillingham High Performance. So closed the Gripper Superstore in favor of Gillingham High Performance. Around that time, like I'm watching all this happen as just like a member of the grip board, and I come home and ask Christy, like, you want to wholesale grippers? Like there's, suddenly a vacancy in the market. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. So this is 2012. I, maybe towards the beginning of the year, and I put about like maybe 4-6 months work into like, what does it take to open a business? Like, do I even have time for this? Like, what do wholesale agreements look like? Who could we even carry? Like, are they going to want to work with us? Like, we're just coming out of nowhere. Hey, do you want us to sell your stuff? Like, how do you open a website? How do you start a store? So I figure all this stuff out. I get like 95% of the way there and just kind of give up. I just didn't feel like I had time for it. We had 3 kids at that point that were all 6 years older under. I had a full-time job at Wells Fargo. But ads got me on YouTube. So this is, and I still think of this as like my first experience with like, people joke around now, like you're talking about, you're talking about Makita drills, and then suddenly you get a Makita drill ad on your Instagram or something. It's like, are they listening to me? But shortly after all of this, so I've done like 95% of the work to set up the company, and the only ads I'm getting on YouTube are for Shopify, like the store platform website that I had looked into. So it was just like all these reminders for a couple months about like, remember Shopify? You should consider Shopify. And so then I just couldn't forget about it. So then it was finally June or July of 2012. We pulled the trigger on it. Made those first like couple like heavy grips, Iron Mine, talked to Tedding, talked to Wade, and brought in like those 4 brands. And that was the bulk of what was in our store to start with. So that was the beginning of it, about July 2012, and that's more or less how it came about. And like I mentioned before, it was totally a side hustle at this point. Like, we're not shipping every day. It's like, okay, we got time to do a little bit of stuff tonight. We kind of burn the candle on the weekends too, and just put in, I guess, quite a few years of that, maybe over a decade of that at this point, before it finally made sense. Where it's like, okay, this is big enough to be, the thing. And that's how it
Nice.
started small. We tried to do everything that we could think of ourselves. So like it's still there too. You go on our website and right at the front, like the collections, there's the collection for Iron Mind. I went out in my backyard and held a number 3 up towards the blue sky and took a photo with I had an iPod at that point. I didn't even have, it was a like iPod Touch. I didn't even have a cell phone. But I just took a picture of a number 3 against the blue sky. And that's still like our collection photo for Iron Mine. I do a lot of that kind of stuff. Like if I can do it myself, I do it myself. And that's like one way that the side hustle kind of made sense is we've always just tried more than like even increasing sales. We spend a lot of energy on like keeping our overhead as low as possible. So like my graphic design, I'm a wizard at this point with the trifecta of Microsoft Excel, Word, and Paint. Like all our stuff is created out of that. And now that you know that, it might, maybe it's like looking behind the curtain a little bit. It's probably going to show. But we've always tried to do that kind of stuff ourselves. But that's how it started. Started small.
Perfect. Did you notice that there was a Mexican person recently certifying on the number 3?
Yeah, I think I actually I saw that on your Instagram.
Yes, his name is Pedro Tamayo, and he has a question for you.
Okay, good for him. Hey man, congratulations on certifying on the 3. I still think that's one of the toughest certifications with that starting with.
Yeah, he's a really strong guy and really young. He's 21, so it's a promising career for him on Gripsport and grippers.
Okay, 3.5 is next for him.
Exactly. Yes. And he wants to know, CPW as a company, what's its mission and vision?
I remember seeing this on the list and wasn't sure what I was going to say about that. I feel like so one of the things that actually ties into like making the company is like we've never really done any marketing in a real way. Like I've got my tie-ins to the sport, which I don't even really compete in anymore, but at the time I did. And then I've got my tie-ins to the grip board, and I feel like that's like me being part of the community. And those like kind of spending time in those places are the only like marketing we've ever really done. Otherwise, it's just been like organic, like word of mouth growth over the years. So in that light, in a way, like Cannon Powerworks isn't really trying to like spread the word of grip or something like that. Like we do what we can, but we're not really marketing. We're not super active on social media. It's really just been I guess the way I would say it is like we're just trying to do a good job. Like it was something that interested us, and I feel like we're just trying to like be a good service, like just be a stand-up, like order from us if you would like to. We'll take care of you. I like the customer service aspect of it. But in terms of, I was trying to think about, because I saw that on there, I'm like, what would I say like our vision is? I don't have like a super like business mind. I wouldn't even necessarily say I'm good at it. It's just so I don't really think of it in that terms. It's just like what am I capable of doing, and how well can I do it? And we're just kind of trying to put our best foot forward. But in terms of like growing the company or something like that, like yeah. I don't really have any goals. It just kind of like incremental business just kind of trickles in, and I'm just trying to take care of the people that come in. But I don't. It's not like I want to see it, do something or do anything specific.
Well, it's working really well, Matt. I really like Cannon Powerworks. and I must say that the customer service, it's one of the things that I like the most. I mean, I am not sure if you are aware of emailing me in the past, but when I was in the US, I bring you like 3 grippers, and then you bring them to me to Chile, and I have asked you many questions.
Yeah.
Well, which RGC is going to be this and that? And I was thinking to myself, maybe I am being like a little pain in the ass, but you have all the patience of the world. And it was,
Yeah,
oh, it's really cool.
yeah, that's, in addition to the career I had at Wells Fargo, there's customer service is a common thread through pretty much any job I've ever had. A lot of customer facing positions for me. So that, it's just always been something where I've tried to be in tune with it and try to worry about the customer's experience.
Give me 1 second, Matt. I have to find the charger of my computer.
Yeah.
This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I must not waste it because I ran out of battery.
Yeah, and you only get one shot, so if this cuts out, you're done.
Exactly. Where is it? Where is it? This is not going to. I am not going to fail. I got it. Perfect. That's it. And we're back. So you were saying customer service was a common trend of what you have done.
Yeah, I mostly finished up with that one. That's the best way I can answer his question. Like in terms of like, does the store like have a vision? I mean, not really. We're just trying to do our best.
Perfect. The second question from Pedro. Did you invent the RGC measuring system? And what's the origin of the RGC system if it wasn't you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It definitely was not me. So this was, I don't remember what year. This was early, like 2000, let's say late 2000s, like 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. It was Dave Morton and Greg Amadon, as far as I know. I think they were part of a blog called Gripper Hell. And they posted like kind of their standard operating procedure for like, here's a method we came up with to kind of like, benchmark how hard is a gripper compared to another one. They showed what their rig looked like. They laid out, hey, we used a 1-inch strap. We aligned it with the end of the handle. And I kind of ate that up. So it was those two guys that put the original numbers out there, and they rated, maybe 20, 25, 50, 100, some, they rated a few, like the grippers they had. After that, a few other people got into it. I know Eric Milfeld, who was a moderator of the grip board at the time. He got into it. Chris Rice got into it. Aaron Corcoran got into it. There was Maddie, Matti, Maddie, who I think is in like Finland, Sweden, something like that. He was actually doing the most at the time. He maintained a website where he was posting all his results, and he had done like quite a few hundred at that point. And I got into it. Just became more and more interested in it. Chris Rice is the one who made the he welded up the rigs I still use. So I got those from him. Jed, I should mention Jed. Jed was doing a lot of ratings too. So started, like, I think even through the grip board, and this is again before Cannon Powerworks, just let it be known, like, send your grippers to me, I'll rate them, and send them back. So I started to accumulate more results, and that eventually like tracked into the service we eventually offered with Cannon Powerworks. But definitely not my idea. I've spent a lot of time since then, trying to understand like what's possible from a rating. What should you expect? What can you control? What can't you control? Are decimals worth it? How accurate can you be? Is there a better way to do this or that? So I feel like I've spent a lot of time figuring out how it works for Cannon Powerworks at this point, but it definitely was not my original idea. It came from Greg Amadon and Dave Morton, as far as I know, were the ones that kind of, were the pioneers of this particular method.
And did they use the 1 inch strap from the very beginning?
Yeah, they're easy to
Oh,
get. Yeah, I mean, you go to the hardware store and there's just a whole mess of 1 inch straps. So that those are easy to get. Theirs had like a little, they like sewed a cap on it that would help them align with the end of the handle. I don't do that. I kind of go by feel. Yeah, that's
I
the start of it.
nice. I noticed because I could say that I am like around the grip world since 2018,
Okay.
and I've seen many videos and search on YouTube, on Instagram about grip content, and I noticed you used to use like bottle caps before the dog tags or
Yep.
medals that you use nowadays. What was the origin of the bottle caps for the grippers?
Yeah. This is more that DIY, like do it yourself mentality that we had. But so we had the store running and we knew we were going to offer the ratings and we're like, we need some kind of tag to hang on there. So it's like, do you just write the number on a paper tag? Those are readily available. And I'm like, no, I kind of want it to be metal. So then we started looking into what kind of metal tag can we find. And we had a set of stamps that I still use that are from Christie's grandpa, I believe, was a cabinet maker, and he would use these stamps to like, make serial numbers and stuff or mark numbers of like, this is cabinet 1 in the design, cabinet 2 in the design. So I inherited those stamps. We kind of, and we still use them. So I wanted to use those and I wanted to stamp on something. Well, it might even have been my mother-in-law, Christy's mom. Someone found at like Joann Fabrics these bottle caps where it already had like a loop. It was like a crafting, scrapbooking product. So we just started buying those in bulk from like Joann Fabrics. But they never stamped really well because they were steel caps and they rusted, and I couldn't find a good way to like get a good impression without deforming the bottle cap. So I never really loved them, but it was just kind of a unique thing that we started with. And then shortly after that, I found a company that was selling the anodized aluminum tags, and I'm like, yep, that's it. So we got a whole bunch of different colors and switched over to those. So if you have one with a bottle cap, that's probably like literally like the first year of Cannon Powerworks, maybe into the second year. So if you have a bottle cap tag, that's early.
Well, because now with what I am listening to, I want one of those classics bottle caps. I will fight for it.
I'll, I can send you one. I I don't. It's gonna be old, but I have a couple that are just like already stamped, and I have a bucket that's like every like mistaken tag or anything I've ever made. I just like if I can't use it, I throw it in that bucket. And I think at one point I bought a collection of used grippers from a guy and got like maybe like 10 or so bottle caps back. So they're old and maybe even kind of rusty, but I'll send you one.
Okay, because let's talk about that later because I also wanted to ask you, it's like a super personal. I love the banner of the photo of
Oh yeah.
the banner of Cannon Powerworks. I want to ask you for one of those as well because I just moved to
Yeah.
a new place and I am putting banners in my home gym
Cool.
because I was watching all the home gyms from the grip people and they all have banners and I was like I want to have banners myself as well. So I will ask you for one, and we can
Yeah.
discuss that later.
Okay.
Um,
That
I
that
want
one
to
that
know.
one that we've got that's in that photo
Yes,
is the only that's
it's
the
the
only
only
one that
one you have.
exists. I can have more made, but I never have. Like it's not like anyone else has a banner. That is the only one that I've ever had made. But we can have more made.
I think more people could be interested in having one. But yeah, I am the first one interested saying it. And so let's discuss that later.
Okay.
Uh, I want to know the creator, you and your wife of the business, how did you came up with the name of the brand?
Yeah. I don't really remember. except that I knew at the time we talked a lot about like, so Wade had the Gripper Superstore where it's like, that's self-explanatory. You know what you're going to get there. You know what's for sale. So we're like, is that going to be the only thing we sell? So I remember talking to her at the time, like we had some discussion about like, well, we'll probably branch into other stuff at some point. Like, what do we want to sell? Like powerlifting stuff, or I don't even know what. Like, we didn't know at the time. We just kind of wanted to leave the door open that it was like a more encompassing name, and I did kind of feel like I wanted our name in there. But the Powerworks part, I don't really remember anymore because I remember thinking shortly afterwards too, because like there's Cannon cameras, which doesn't have, it only has one in the middle, not two in the middle, so it's CANON. But they had a really popular camera called Cannon Power Shot. So I don't know if that was in my head or something, but yeah, I don't know exactly. I don't remember anymore exactly where the Powerworks came from. But I remember thinking that we wanted it to be like a more general name where you could kind of sell anything. And then here, like 12 years later, we haven't really branched out into anything else. It's all still grip related stuff. But maybe I guess we got the smelling salts. I don't know. Maybe we'll still branch out.
Yeah. Well, I bought my flask from you, so you sell many things. It's like a Gripsport related. You can have a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before going to the next question, I want to ask something that I think it was not in the list, or maybe it was. The Cannon Powerworks t-shirts. What happened to
Yeah.
them? I always wanted to have one and I couldn't.
Yeah. I think we'll have t-shirts back because I'm researching it again because people want like gripboard t-shirts too. Like the Mash Monster guy, right?
I am wearing one, of course. I have my
Hey,
collection.
you got it on.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have this one and a red one. I love them. They are cool.
Now I can see it says #1 for grip strength. I didn't even notice that till now. Shame on me. That's awesome. Way to go, man. Yeah. So in trying to figure out like how am I going to fund the grip board? Like how is that? What's that going to look like? I've been looking more into apparel again because there's a lot better options now where you can just put your design in there, and then the customer can come through as a one-off and say like, I want that hoodie with this design in this size, ship it, and it prints and ships directly to them. The way we were doing the other shirts, the problem was like, even with a pre-sale, you ask like, who wants one of these, and we'll get 20 replies, but you got to order 200 shirts for it to make sense. So then we got 180 unsold shirts of random sizes where we just had to guess like who's going to want these, and it took forever to move them. The margins kind of stink in terms of like actually tying up money in inventory, where these newer models that don't have you stocking any inventory, maybe you sell a t-shirt and it's just an incremental, like you make $6, you make $6. That's kind of worth it when you didn't even have to handle it. But apparel is a really tough game. And that's kind of why we got out of it. It was fun to do the shirts. We've got a couple floating around the house still too. I really liked the colors, where then it also said Cannon Powerworks on the back. I really liked those shirts. I think those will be back someday. And that's that art. I just love that art. So we do like using that art from Roy Wolfs in the Netherlands, who also we went back to for the skeleton key. He did the art on the skeleton keys. So we like sticking with him with projects that we can send his way.
Actually, I don't know if it's well pronounced, but Geraltimus, he told me that story because his friend from the Netherlands was the one who came up with the design, and that design is really cool. It has all the grip tools that we love: the gripper, the flask, the inch dumbbell.
Yeah, we sent him like we basically just told him like our the idea in our head is like I think it's called a sugar skull, like something like that. And we're like we just want one of those, but instead of like flowers and stuff, just make it like grip stuff. And that was his. Well, I don't know how many drafts he did, but that was the first draft he submitted to us. He's like, "What do you think about this?" And I'm like, "That's it. You nailed it."
Nice. Matt, I want to know if you were not like the creator of calibrating grippers, so to speak.
See, I wouldn't say that. we've done a lot at this point, but I didn't create it.
Sorry, I didn't listen well. What?
Oh, I was just clarifying. We didn't create it. I've done a lot of ratings at this point, and I love talking about it, but we didn't create it.
Yes, that's what I meant. You didn't create it, but today you are the gold standard. You are the gold standard of calibration. Everyone worldwide, in general, they say like, "Hey, I want to know like the calibration of a gripper."
Yeah.
Go with Matt Cannon. And how did you earn that like position of authority?
I guess I would say brute force. We've just done a lot at this point. Because I try to highlight this with people that come and talk to me about ratings or what's possible. I do shy away from the word calibration. Because that was in the original name, right? The redneck gripper calibrator was what RGC originally stood for. And then I think it was Brent Barbie that suggested like, hey, maybe that can stand for like rating a gripper at the close. Because I didn't come up with that either. I believe that was Brent. So I don't tend to call it RGC. I just call it a rating. I think calibration is a different thing where it's part of the manufacturing process. So like a calibrated item would be manufactured to certain specifications, and that's not what's happening here. Like we're taking a measurement after the fact. Like we're not. It wasn't. Maybe who built the gripper had their own tolerances, but in terms of a rating, we're measuring after the fact. So I just usually call it a rating. And I try to stress to people that like someone else's process or their rig like doesn't need to be exactly like ours. I think there's a lot of value in anyone taking ratings as long as they're internally consistent. So if you made your own device and you're rating your own grippers and you rate it and it comes up at 150 and you rate it again and it's 155, that's a problem. Like there's something you can fine tune in your process. But if you rate it and you always get, 149, 150, 151, 150, 150, 150, that's good enough, right? Like you're getting good results. So if you take that and compare it to a Cannon Powerworks gripper, and when we rated it, it was 145, that's the value in our ratings. So I think that's where I say like we got out front just based on brute force, that there's, something like, I need to update the chart actually to be more current, but we're at something like, 15,000 grippers that we've rated. Like I know last time I updated it, we were over 1,000 number threes alone that we had rated. So it's just that having that bulk of data and having a process that we've paid attention to, fine-tuned, tried to remove variability from, but there's always some. I think that's maybe worth something to people, that they know how it's going to compare to another gripper that was rated by us. And just at this point, in terms of sheer volume, our ratings are just out there more. But anybody who's rating grippers, like as long as it's internally consistent, those are good numbers too. It's just maybe there's a question of how they compare to ours, but it's not that ours are like better or more accurate. It's just the number that we got when we rated it. And there's a lot of numbers out there that you can compare to where we rated it. So I think that's part of the value in our rating service at this point.
Perfect. I have a question from a friend from Greece. His name is Panagiotis Kalamidas.
Yeah. Hey.
Maybe you remember Panagiotis
yeah.
from the Gripsport. He wants to know, I would love to know how much time it takes to rate the heavy grippers, like over the 3.5, or it's just like the normal ones.
Yeah, so I'll get into this a little bit because when you approached me for this interview in the first place, you kind of mentioned like, hey, we don't necessarily need to talk about, you know, your process or anything like that. You know, if that's like a trade secret or something, and it really
Sure.
isn't. Like I've seen comments before, like, oh, he doesn't talk about what he does. But I feel like I do. Like when people approach me about like how do you rate grippers, I try to give them the rundown. I've got a few, you know, kind of consolidated thoughts on the grip board where I posted like, here's some things that I've learned you need to pay attention to. Otherwise, like it's Greg and Dave's process. Like that's what we're doing. Now I will say that I have built myself some efficiencies that like help me out in a production setting. And like I'm not necessarily looking to like put all that on video and say here's how I accomplish every one of those things, but it's Greg and Dave's process. Like that's what we're doing. We're hanging weight over the handle with a 1-inch strap, right? You know, I've made some of it digital, as have others, and gotten good results, but there's not as much mystery there as I think people think. But the heavy grippers are no different. That was one of the things that I had to figure out from an efficiency standpoint is like, okay, if I'm going to offer this service and I wanted to keep the cost low, so it's $5 now, and that's the original price. I remember going to like some guys that were active at the grip board at the time, like Timu in Finland, like Daniel Renard, some other guys, it's just Aaron Corcoran, I think. Just some friends I had that and basically said like, what would you guys pay? But like suppose I'm starting a store, like what would you pay for this service? And got varying results and decided on $5, and we've tried to keep it at $5. It still is $5, you know, 12-ish years later. But some of the efficiencies I had to solve for is like, how do you put 30 reps on a GHP 10? Like I can't close it. So I had to figure that out. And that's, you know, that's some of the efficiencies that maybe I'm not looking to get like super into, but yeah, we had to like build a fixture and figure out a way to like safely get, you know, get reps on a heavy gripper in a way that was manageable in like a production setting where like, I mean, people used to order 4 GHP 10s at once, or like, you know, we'll get an order where it's, you know, buy 3 Iron Mine, and in the notes it said I want all number 4s. Like we get a lot of those kind of orders, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm putting reps on those. So we had that's just some of the troubleshooting we've had to do. So in terms of his original question, it doesn't take longer to rate any certain gripper. They all take about the same amount of time, and I try to batch them so that I'm doing like the same steps in order for like more grippers at once. That helps.
This one, it's going to be like, it's a question that maybe it's a little tricky because I am not sure about one of the words because I am a Spanish speaker. But
We'll figure it out.
Mr. Alex Guia, Fits of
Yeah.
Alex.
What's up, Alex?
Greetings to Alex. I went to his house in 2022, and it
cool.
was like my best experience in grip so far. So
And
far,
you had him here,
I
right?
met. What?
You had him on the podcast on the.
Yes,
Right?
in the episode number 10, I think, and
Yeah,
Alex is really cool.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones that I've listened to. So shout out to Alex. That was just, he was real, you know, and just his it was fun. It was one of the funnest one I've listened to. Real affable guy, real likable guy.
When I am speaking Spanish, not in English, when I'm speaking Spanish, I try to be like Alex, like you're speaking and then a joke, and laughing. In English, it's not it doesn't work like that with me yet, but yeah, I like Alex.
That was a great listen. Good episode.
Yes, he wants to know, what gripper do you think is the easiest to tell if it's fully closed, and how do the different bevel styles at the end of the handle affect the ability to tell?
Yeah, this weighed into like when we were thinking about what do we want to do for standard. So I think the hardest to tell is GHP, with the rounded bevels at the bottom and then the sticker on top of that. Just to me, it just puts like the business that you're trying to see, like on video and that kind of thing. It puts it like just back in there a little bit. Some of the older teddings that have really large bevels can be, in my opinion, harder to tell, just that it meets up on a video. So our strategy with standard was to go with a smaller bevel and a steeper angle, so there's like no place for the clothes to hide, is kind of our thought process. So that on video it would show up well. So I think it can be hard to tell with some of those brands. Heavy Grips can be the same way. Heavy Grips kind of has like a more rounded end to it than a distinct sharp bevel, where you can just like see the handles come together. And maybe some of this is splitting hairs. A lot of this on video is like, it's not that hard. Like, you just pause if you need to, and you can see. It's a worse problem if like handles are offset from each other, like if it comes closed and they don't line up. That can really cause problems, where like the shadow from the other handle makes it look like there's a gap, but there isn't. So that can cause a problem, but isn't necessarily related to the bevels. But to answer his question, that's the direction I would head with it. And that's why we went with a sharper bevel on standard.
Nice. I have another question from Rob Vintage Weights. I
Sure.
already know that you met Warren Tedding, but have you ever interacted like with Randall Strossen?
Yeah, so I mentioned right at the beginning that I wanted to talk about this, because to put a face with a name. I have interacted with those guys, Tedding, Wade, Randall, Bill from the Gripboard. But what's kind of funny in this like internet age, or whatever you want to call it, it's been very little interaction. So like, I met Wade once, like in all the time that we've done business together. There was one time where like he was going to be near where I lived for like a soccer tournament. And we met up and like chatted for a bit, and he dropped off some inventory, and then we kind of went on our way. That's the only time I've met Wade. And we text some, but not a lot. I've never spoken with Randall. Just in all the business we've done with Ironmind. I love Ironmind. We have a great relationship with them. Great company. They're really supportive. They've got great support staff over there that I usually end up like, dealing with the wholesale orders and that kind of thing. So it's only been, a few times I've ended up talking to Randall, and I've never met him. Bill from the Gripboard is another one. So like, there's all these years where like, he's the owner, he's the administrator, I was a moderator. And we had all this interaction over like, going back to like 2006. And we just, over the course of like the end of last year, when he was talking about like, I might want to sell the Gripboard, I might want to, are you interested in any of this stuff? Like, when we were figuring that stuff out, we finally hopped on a Zoom call together, and that was basically the first time I ever like actually talked to him. And now we've actually talked quite a bit since then, but it's weird. Like, there's so many of these people that like in a way you kind of feel like you know them, but I haven't actually met them. So it's a lot of interesting people in the sport. I've found by and large like great people in the sport. I would say Jed Johnson's another one, moderator at the Gripboard. He's so active in the community. I met him when I went to nationals, but I think he was, if I remember correctly, he was not only running the contest and I think competing, but I think he was also like having trouble with an injury. So he was like doing all that through the fog of like dealing with pain as well, or something like that. So like, I didn't talk to him much when we were there. And that's the only chance I've had to like actually meet him. And then we've talked on the phone a couple times, but it's just weird. These guys that are just like, they're so like inseparable from like the sport and the community itself. But it's like there just aren't these chances to like, well, I guess there are. I shouldn't say that. Like I could be going to more contests and that kind of thing, but I don't. So it's just like I have had trouble like meeting these people, or just like making an actual connection with them aside from just like that online connection.
Interesting. For me, when I met Timmy and Alex and Just Strange, seeing them live, it was surreal because it's someone that you are just watching in your phone, and now it has a face, and they are like this giants.
Yep.
I am like 5'11" and 200 pounds, and they are like giants, and I was like, wow, this is surreal. We have another question from Australia, from Mr. Joe Hudson.
Sure.
Do you know him?
Yeah. Hey, Joe.
Joe is not so much into grippers, but he's a really active member of Gripsport these days. So he wants to know about the Robert Barabant collab, hybrid grippers and narrow grippers. He wants to know the origin of the collab and what will happen in the future.
That's another good example of what we were just talking about, like Baraband's in Austria, and we always correspond over email. I've never spoken to him. I've never met him. But it's been all these years of like email correspondence. And he is, as far as I understand, he is like a one-man show. Like it's him in his shop, like literally making everything that comes out of that shop. And it's been tough for us to get inventory. It's just it's not that he doesn't want to or anything like that. He's just one of those guys that's like, as he's like so busy and so focused, that like it just doesn't, we'll go long periods of time without being able to actually like get inventory. So those collabs, we've always enjoyed anything we can get from him. We have the adjustable right now, and that took some doing to get that back. Theoretically, I think we have some like all chrome grippers coming our way, but I don't really know when. It's just kind of like it'll literally be like we'll email about stuff, and then like 6 months will go by, where it's just like, hey, just checking in, and then he'll email us like, do you need anything? So there have to be those like, it's like a perfect storm of like, not only do we have a need for inventory, but he has some time to make the stuff, and then we'll get something. So it's been tough to get Baraband stuff and keep it in stock. So we would love to do more with him to get that stuff. It's just a matter of getting it. The one that probably will never come back is the Spectrum line that we had, where they were colored.
I remember them. I remembered it like in 2018, and I was like, I will save for them because I was in college, and I will save. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, these
purple.
This one's gonna go up for sale soon. It's a 280N, which is one of the less common levels. But the color on the handles is like, it can be pretty resilient, this anodized color. But all the little tips of the knurling like just scuff off so easily that then you can see like the silver metal below. So it was just a nightmare to manage this inventory, because like once it got shipped internationally, and then like we're hanging it up on the wall like this, and then someone orders it and gets it rated, or we pre-rate it, you're handling it enough that it was just impossible to keep it looking pristine for when it actually sold. So I did not enjoy managing those colored ones, even though they're cool. Maybe as a special edition here and there if we can get some, or even do some through standard. I actually have, I don't know where it is, I have 2 standard Cobalts that have Teflon coated handles that are black. We were just trying to see how that held up. So those 2 grippers exist. but those are the only two colored standards at this point. But it's the same problem. Like the sharp knurling, you know, you scuff off those little tips of the diamonds, and the metal's just right there to see. So that Baraband one probably isn't coming back.
And what about the hybrid? I remember I have one hybrid,
Yeah,
the 240, I think,
that's an interesting
and
story.
it's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so that the hybrids came about between me and Tedding because Tedding had reached out to us and basically said, like, I think I need to raise prices. And like the reason was, you know, kind of like material cost, kind of, but just like you know, and he's like, I got the impression that he just like maybe needed more volume. So I went back to him and said, like, what if we just made more grippers? Like, what if you already sell like the regular and the 5/8. What if we take one 5/8 handle and put it on there? So that was an invention that we presented to him, and he's like, yeah, I'll do that. So suddenly we were ordering like twice as many grippers, just so some of them could be hybrids. And then unfortunately, I think it was 2019 or so that Tedding passed away, but we had stopped carrying his line like quite a bit before that. And we went to Baraband and basically said, like, do you want to make these? Because now we can't get them from Tedding anymore. So we switched over to Baraband. That one was interesting because of the thicker starting diameter of the handle, that it was 20 millimeter handles instead of 3/4 inch handles. So they're just slightly bigger, with one 20 millimeter and one, here goes my memory. I want to say 16 millimeter. I think it was 20 and 16. That ends up just being, as a whole, when it's closed, slightly more narrow than like 3/4 and 3/4. So it was a slightly different product than the one we had from Tedding. I really like the hybrid grippers. Those are some of my favorite grippers. The ones in my own collection, like where I only have like 12 or so grippers, you know, 6 or 7 of them are hybrids, Tedding hybrids.
Nice.
Out there, actually, let me mention this because I don't have one of my own Tedding hybrid beginners, the beginner level. So I
Oh,
have it right now. I have it placed, it just held in place with one that has 2 smaller handles instead of one big and one small. That's kind of my placeholder, but I'm always kind of on the lookout for a hybrid beginner because I don't have one. Anyone?
yeah. Anyone watching, and actually thinking about people with collections. Have you ever like spoke or met Joe Musselwhite with his Gripper Museum? I
Yeah,
used to watch all his videos, and on the
yeah.
collection it was like, wow, all the ones with the extended handles, all the Mash Monster replicas.
Yes, that's another example of a guy that I've never met him. I'm almost positive I've never talked to him. But we did buy, like, he would offer some of his collection to us sometimes. A couple times we did that where we bought like a rather large lot of grippers from him. And that was all correspondence over email. So no, I've never met him. I've emailed with him like quite a bit. No, I shouldn't even say that. Not quite a bit. I've emailed with him, like in the times that we've corresponded, but haven't really haven't another guy that I haven't had a chance to meet. And
I would
I don't
love
know
to
what
meet
happened to
him.
him. He fell off the face of the earth. He was, you know, pretty active at the grip board there for all those years, and then just kind of, you know, just kind of faded into the background. And I think now hasn't been there in quite a few years. So if
Yeah,
he's out there, hey Joe.
these are there. I'd love to go to your museum someday.
Yeah.
The next question is kind of a troll question, I think.
A troll
From
question.
from Joe Hudson. Do you think people ever switch your tags around
Oh,
to fake closing higher rated rivers?
I don't think that's a troll question. Because it could happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know. I'm sure it's happened. But like, what are you going to do? Like in terms of it, like being part of, because that's one of the things that we're considering now with like, what exactly do we do with a new Mash Monster certification? Like, are there safeguards that we could put in place that kind of protect against some of these things that you can, misrepresent or fake on video? Because I think like I try not to get too wrapped up in a lot of that, because I think it would be hard to fake some of this stuff. Certainly it's possible. Like you can get handles off grippers. So yes, you could take a number 2 spring and put number 4 handles on it and close it on video and pretend you closed a number 4. But like, how many people are doing that? And like, I don't know. Like, to me, to worry about it too much, it feels to me just like managing to the minority of the population that wants to cheat. Like, just, do your thing, switch the tags, who cares? But yeah, I think there's other things that you can do, like in a certification setting, to put in safeguards around cheating, or misrepresentation. But I'm sure people have swapped tags. I'm sure it's happened.
There's a question that they sent me on Instagram like minutes before the interview.
Yeah.
I think it's a guy from Latin America because his name is Miguel El Animal, like Miguel the Animal.
Okay.
I don't know which is I don't know which
Yeah.
is his country, but
Yeah.
but he's really into grippers. And he asked me if you were like thinking about, in example, having your standard grippers, but instead of the caps of the metals, stamping the rating on the gripper. What about that idea?
Yeah.
You can't fake something that it's stamped,
Yeah. So there's, I guess the thing I would say about that, there's 2 of those that exist, that are standard. We've made 2 custom standard grippers that went to a specific customer, for a specific reason, but those are out there. So, and those had, like the number engraved into the end of the handle. So it's not that we can't do it. I don't, one thing that I do try to highlight with ratings is, we put the initial reps on the grippers to try to get to a stable point where you could hope to take a rating that is going to last for a while. I don't know if you saw this. I was still on Instagram at this point. And we tried to do that like 1,000,000 rep challenge. Did you see that?
I saw that, and I always explain, because here in Chile, if we talk about grip, they love grippers, and they always ask questions related to that. And it's coming in the next question. But yeah, okay. I saw the broken handle, your experiment. It's what's
so
really clever.
That was an interesting experiment, because we got to see like how, like as you put thousands of reps on a gripper, like how quickly does that rating degrade, right? Because we know that it does. It just, we see it in buying used grippers that were already rated by us. Like depending on how much it was used, it might have dropped a pound or 2. Okay. Just as you use it, they can fall off a little bit. So, but we saw with the 1,000,000 rep gripper that it's not quick. It really does take thousands of reps. And really the most important thing in getting a decent stable rating is to put those reps on to start with, because straight out of the package, depending on the brand, like they can lose quite a bit, maybe even like 5 pounds, just boom, right on the, like literally the first close, just because the spring has never been used. And maybe people will think this is interesting too. In trying to develop standard and reaching out to spring companies, we learned that like the way that we're using these springs is really outside of the specifications for the size of the spring. Like you really should not be closing it as far as you do. And like, obviously it works out, like you can put tens of thousands of reps on these things. But that is more stress on the spring than really what the specifications would call for, like in like an industrial setting. Like if you were making that same spring to be part of like a dumpster or a machine or something like that, it would have its range of motion that you should use it in, and we're going past that. So I believe that that's what contributes to them degrading a little bit over time, is you're overstressing like what the way the coil, like from a specification standpoint, the way the coil wanted to work. You're just putting a little more stress on that. I don't know. Maybe that's not true, but that's my impression of like over time why it would get easier.
Okay. Now the first question
So actually, sorry to interrupt, but so his question originally was, have we ever thought about stamping the number on there?
Yes.
So that's one reason why I kind of like the tag, is you rate it to start with, mark it 120, and then 10 years later, is it still 120? If the spring is rusted, maybe not. If maybe you filed it, then it's not. Maybe maybe you used it enough that the rating degraded just a little bit, and now it's more accurately 119 or 118, but that number is still permanently there as 120. We'll see which direction the Mash Monster cert heads, but that's one of my main ideas right now, is that it will head that direction. So those would probably be grippers that had the number stamped on the end, like, for what level it was. And then we would monitor that as time goes on. And if it ever dropped off of that number, we would swap it out with a gripper of the same specs where you're back at that number.
Perfect. That makes me want to grab my number 3, who's rated 139, and send it back to you, because that's the one I use the most.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have been able to manage 100 clicks on that spring, so maybe it has a lower rating.
Yeah.
We must see it, because I have many grippers that I want you to rate yet. So this is going to be the next, like the second question, coming from someone from Chile.
Okay.
Mr. Salvador, Salva Strength. He wants to know, have you ever thought about selling gripper calibration devices, even if that means decreasing the income associated to your calibration, to your rating services? Rating, not calibration.
Right, rating, yeah.
Yes.
Right now we haven't, and it's not really over a concern that, like, there goes our market or something like that. I just think, like right now we don't sell any products where we had it. Well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say where we had it fabricated, like welded up. Right now we have loading pins that we had welded up, and it's not that I can't find a shop. Like I have access to a shop that could weld that kind of stuff for us, but it's just kind of like, we haven't really tried to get into that. I actually, if we did, the thing I've been also careful about with Cannon Powerworks is we only sell things that are like easy enough to ship. So there's like for example, there's some products that we could get from Grip Genie, but we didn't pick them up because it changes like the size of box we can use for like international shipments. Because that's always been interesting for us. Close to like 40 or maybe a little more than 40% of our business is international. And once you get to a certain size box, it really changes the international rates. So we're kind of trying to stick to stuff that's easy enough to ship. So if I ended up selling rating devices, it would probably be like a collapsible one that you could like assemble yourself, where it shipped smaller. Because I think you could mock one of these up pretty easy, just with a couple pieces of pipe and some hose clamps and that kind of thing. It's just not that complex of a thing, where I feel like the people who really wanted one or wanted to have one made just call up their buddy who can weld, and they tack up a couple pieces of metal and there you've got one.
Perfect. You make it sound like much simple than we all think. It's like the Cannon Powerworks, let's say, we are all attracted to what Matt does to calibrate the grippers. He has like a magic wand. I don't know, something like that.
No, it's yeah, it's Greg and Dave. Like it's their 10-page original PDF, which is out there. You can still find it. That's all we're doing, and they describe their device and how to build it right in there.
Where can one get that PDF? It's you can buy it somewhere, or it's like on the Gripboard.
There used to be links at the Gripboard, but I don't. It was Frankie, the Gripboard member. Frankie was the one who actually hosted the document, and I don't know if it's still. I don't know if that website is still active. So you could try to search it up through the Gripboard, and if that link is still active, if he's still hosting that site, then you can get it there. Otherwise, I'm positive I have it. If people email us, we can get it out to them.
Sounds really interesting. Now, Matt, I want to ask your opinion about another part of the world. There's a device. There's a device developed by Gripper Mania. Have you seen that? A rating machine, the one that you move like a piece of metal, the grip meter. What's your opinion of that kind of rating machine?
Yeah, so I think it's great. I think it goes back to kind of what I talked about, where it doesn't really matter like what you're doing, like the specifics of what you're doing. If you're getting repeatable results, like that's the main thing. So if gripper after gripper, he's getting certain numbers on that thing, then those are good results. In terms of how they compare to ours, that's only relevant if you want to compare them to ours. So it's an impressive piece of machinery. I don't know what you're picturing in your head for what we got, but like it seems more sophisticated. Like it looks like good craftsmanship. It's just in a way it doesn't really matter what the process is, as long as it's repeatable. I guess in terms of like, I don't think we could make that work. It seems too slow for a production setting. Like if it takes 15 minutes to rate a gripper, then that service cannot cost $5. You know what I mean? Like if you can only rate 4 grippers an hour, like even if that adds up to $20, like I don't have those kinds of hours to post 100 pre-rated grippers.
Oh, I understand. That's a good point. It's a lot. Being like this, it takes a while.
So it's a beautiful machine, but I just think it wouldn't be practical in a production setting. But I don't think he is in a production setting. So then, like, what's it matter if he's getting good results? It's a great machine.
I have a question about the background, Matt. Are those only standard grippers?
Yeah, I think all these are. There's I don't know how far up you can see. There's some used grippers here. There's some Hulk grippers like higher up. But yeah, these are all standard.
Because I want to know the story about standard. How did you came up with them? Because, well, I personally love them. When I first saw the Cobalt, those were the ratings that I just missed to jump into 3.5. I remember that I asked you, hey, do you have any lower ratings, like lower than 165? And you told me like, yeah, 160, 57, 160, and 162. And that was in March of 2022. It was like a dream, and they felt incredible. And those were like first generation, but which was the origin? I am super interested.
Yeah, that was a project that's always been in the back of my mind. Like, what if we made a gripper? The whole time we've had Cannon Powerworks. But it didn't really make sense from a time standpoint until I quit Wells Fargo. So then I finally had time to take on some of these larger projects and bring to market a couple inventions that have been, in the back of my mind, but that we didn't really have time to develop. So like the bumper, like that's something that's been rolling around in my head for, the better part of 10 years, but it didn't make sense to try and develop that until I had quit Wells Fargo. and was just had like a more full-time time dedication to Cannon Powerworks. So it finally, I could at least look into at this point in 2020, like what if we made our own grippers? But then the question right away is like, Iron Mind does a great job. GHP does a great job. I love brands personally like Heavy Grips and Grip Genie. I think like Heavy Grips, for example, is just a phenomenal price point for a functional gripper that maybe you don't mind like filing or putting a zillion reps on. I personally like that they're a little bit narrower. That just fits my hand better. But so what would it be like? What would be the reason for us to like make another gripper? Like we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We didn't invent anything in the first place, in terms of grippers. It's all just like, it's already all in place from those who came before us. So it's like, if we're going to do it, it should add some different kind of value. And that's where we specifically targeted, like just from all the ratings data we had, we could see these dead zones in the progression. Like if you're coming up through, like, let's say you like Iron Mind grippers and you want one that's 95, sorry, it doesn't exist. Like unless you were like the one person who got the number 2 that rated like 95 or 96. So, and if you wanted a gripper that rated 130 or 135, like what are you going to get? It doesn't exist. There was another dead zone at 160, another dead zone at 190. So we looked at that and we're like, okay, can we play with the specifications and get there? So really the only things in play are the spread between the handles, the mounting depth of the handle, and then this internal coil diameter. So for standard, we opened this up just slightly. So the coil is a slightly larger coil than, like, for example, like GHP and Iron Mind seem to have the same size coil. So in my mind, what we were trying to do there is you take, so like this is a copper, but it doesn't matter. Like iron has the same spring size as Iron Mind level 3, or Iron Mind number 3, GHP level 7, Tedding Grandmaster. Those all have the same spring size. So to bring the strength and also like roughly the same average around 150. So if we wanted to bring that average down about 10%, we tried to figure out how much should we open up the inside of the coil. So that was kind of step 1. Then once we had that, we knew we wanted like a certain preload. I guess in springs it's called preload, but we call it spread. We didn't want them to be crazy wide. Just in my own mind, I don't prefer wide grippers. So I was kind of leaning on that, just on my own preference. So you're kind of stuck in a certain range where the gripper makes sense at all. And that actually affects the rating second most over what spring size you've chosen. So after you've chosen a spring size, spread matters most for like the ultimate rating. Then it's mount, and then to a certain extent, like what you've chosen for a coil size. So what we were trying to do is put those things together in a way that you ended up with grippers in these dead zones. So we wanted iron to be like 135, and we wanted cobalt to be 160. So there was like 5 of those. We wanted gold to be like 90 or 95. And once we filled those dead zones, then it was just a matter of do we just offer those, or should we build it out to a larger line? And we ended up building it out to 9 grippers just because kind of why not? And some of those are overlap with existing brands. From there, really the goal was to not add any cost to the gripper that didn't need to be there. So like, you look at a GHP gripper and it's just staggeringly gorgeous in terms of like what a gripper can look like. But all those little details that make a GHP what it is also add money like to the product. Like if you're going to polish the spring, if you're going to machine a bunch of bands on here, if you're going to have like nice rounded bevels and then also add stickers, like, you see what I mean? Like or like Iron Mine. I don't even know how they do some of what they're doing, like where it goes COC around, like Captains of Crush in those tiny little letters. You know, all of those details like matter in terms of a product that the manufacturer wants to present. But when we're thinking about standard, we didn't want any details that weren't like functional. So the focus for us was hitting certain strengths, and I wanted the knurling to be sharp as hell. And that's kind of it. Otherwise, like, you know, when this thing's in the machine getting made anyway, it only, you know, you just buzz these letters on the end, and that doesn't add a lot of cost. So we did end up labeling them. We went through other iterations of like, what do we do? Like at one point I was thinking about just like spray painting the springs different colors, just because like that wouldn't add a lot of cost, and visually you'd be able to tell which gripper it was. So it's like we had to kind of decide like what do we want to put on there that actually matters. And if you remember, the original ones were glued when Tom was making them for us. And then now since we had to move on from Tom, when he passed away, now we're pinning them, which you know, again, that if people don't know, that was not our idea. Tedding and PDA also, you know, pin their grippers. Tedding famously mostly had always pinned his, which is funny because every single time I met him, every time I had him cornered and we're talking about grippers, he would go on and on about that. He just, I got to move away from pinning these things. I burn up so many drill bits. It takes time. You know, when you're hammering these in, you can miss and hit the handle, and then suddenly I'm selling that as a used gripper. Just you know what I mean? Like, so because it has a mark on it, I can't really sell it as new. So gluing seems like he wanted to move towards gluing. Every time I ever talked to Tedding, he would talk about like, I want to move towards glue, but I can't find one where like once it's glued up, I can't just like break it loose with some torque. I think he was being too hard on himself. I think he was over engineering it, because there's certainly glues that work. Everyone else glues. But that was actually hard for us. Like when Tom and I were trying to find a glue to glue up standard, like, I mean, we're meeting with companies, we're trying to figure it out. Like we're having problems with epoxy because it's so thick. Like once you put it down in there, we like couldn't slide the spring on. It would cause like a vacuum, and you like literally couldn't push it on because the glue was so thick. So I don't know. I never loved the glue solution. It's expensive, it's messy, and it can fail. Where the pinned connection is like guaranteed, it can't fail. And actually, if you want to take the handle off, you can. You can just knock the pin out and take the handle off. Which again, in an eventual setting, like if we end up using this design for like a Mash Monster cert, like let's say enough people have used the gripper, or just someone had it and dropped it or something, and now the knurling's beat up or it got smooth, we can swap a handle out with a fresh handle, where hopefully the idea would be to preserve that starting stance that everybody closed a gripper that was a certain way and a certain rating. I just want to mention, because I keep catching myself do it, like where this thing puts like my view and like you, like I feel like I keep looking up and down. So if that's annoying later to the viewer, like that's what's going on. I can't like pick where to look at.
Actually, I thought like, yeah, maybe the viewers don't want to see like so much about me, but let's change it, and now we can see both of us.
Yeah,
What about that?
I just keep looking up and down. My view didn't change, but I just wanted to mention that to the viewer, that if I'm like, you know,
No,
like
but there's an at least in my view, there's an icon like over there that says view,
yeah,
and it has like two. Well,
yeah, I don't know. It's working
if
out for
you
me, but I just thought I'd mention it. But yeah, that's
well,
where
if you rewatch the episode when I uploaded, you will see like me right here and you right there, and there's the two of us.
okay, perfect.
And at least for me, it's great to have like the big screen with just you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I am enjoying this.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, and I'm sure it's fine, but the So that's kind of where Standard started, with that idea that we were specifically trying to, like, we needed a reason for us to do it. Like, we didn't want to just like do another, like, oh, here we are as well, buy one of these that's just overlap with everything else. Because none of what we're doing is novel. Like, Tedding and Iron Mine, blazed these trails. Not us, but we did try to think about like the end user, like think about the grip enthusiast, like what would they like to see? And that's where you have these hallmarks back to Tedding, back to PDA, and just we thought people would like knurling that is sharp as hell.
I like it. I recently we did an order because with Gripsport Latino, I am doing like a at least once a month big training with friends, because I think I am one of the persons who has most grip equipment in Chile. So it's like, yeah, let's meet, let's have, what would you like to try? Yeah, the flask, yeah, the little bighorn, the grippers, etc. And we said, yeah, let's buy some grippers. And actually, we could buy one of the last GHP 8. So it's like part of the history. I told the guys, get a GHP 8. They are not going to be there forever. So, and I got myself a standard Cooper, and wow.
You like it?
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it. And
That's one of my favorite levels.
In my next purchase, I think I'll get like the previous one. I don't know, it's gold maybe. I don't know if it's in stock, but I want one.
Yeah,
in the future.
Gold's one. Well, gold's one below copper, so net one up is platinum.
Perfect.
Which I have back in stock.
Excellent.
A lot of these are platinum.
Excellent, Matt.
Yeah, I guess I have. Just still on the topic of like Standard. The funny thing for us too is like, what do we name these? Like, it was kind of the same problem again. Like, we're like, what? And I always like the idea of like these companies that are like, Standard Oil or General Machinery or International, like, is just the name of the company. So those were always kind of stuck in my head. We went through a few other ideas, and I kind of settled on Standard just because I wanted it to like, I wanted it to almost like feel generic, like almost like you have like a white can of beer that just says beer on it in black letters. Like, that was kind of like my attitude towards like the brand. So we picked Standard, and then it's like, well, what do we name the levels? Like, are we just gonna 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 them, or like, because there's already enough of those that it gets confusing. And then like there's already heavy grips and Baraban, where it's like the level is a number, and then that gets kind of confusing with ratings, because you're like, this is a 147 RB 240, and it's like okay, so I don't want numbers in there. And we went through quite a few things. We're like, what can we name these? And then somehow settled on the metals and liked that, and realized we could use the chemical symbols. But we went through a few iterations of other things that these almost got called before we settled on the names of metals and went with those.
Perfect. I have questions from Mr. Ben Helms.
Yeah. Hey, Ben.
Ben wants to know what motivated you to make grippers. Was it like something, I mean, a part of what we already spoke? What was your motivation?
Yeah, that was the big thing, was plugging those gaps. Like that was the main motivation. It's just we had enough ratings data where it was like, okay, if we want a gripper that's going to average 135, like at this point we just have to make it. And then the only reason some of the other levels exist was just to like round it out to a larger line. But yeah, that was the main motivation.
Another one from Ben. Do you plan to create a certification for the standard grippers?
Yeah, this almost happened with Tom. And so we had been working on like, what would it look like? What would we offer? How would we offer it? So this is before I became like the administrator of the grip board. And before, like, there was a question about like, what do we do with Mash Monster? I was trying to develop a certification for Cannon Powerworks, where basically it would be levels that were numbers. Like, you could get on the list at 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, like whatever it was. And I had picked the levels. I think there was going to be 18 of them. I had started working with Tom on like, what are the handles going to look like? Can we get special springs, like just so they look different? But then it begs the question of like, how's it going to work? Are we sending the same gripper around? Do we make a ton of them? And it's more like GHP, where like you buy your gripper and like close your own one, and it goes on the list that way. We were pretty close to sorting that out, and Tom passed away, so that project got shelved for long enough that now the grip board comes around, right? I start talking to Bill about like, hey, are you interested in the grip board? And I was very interested in it. So we, in all those discussions, kind of realizing that it's probably time to like freshen the Mash Monster cert somehow. Is that the place for this to go? So I think more than a standard certification, I think at this point, the energy will probably go towards like what's possible with the Mash Monster certification. And I think it's going to take the form mostly of how that standard certification almost was, where it's going to be numbered levels, and we're controlling like the specs of the grippers, like at those levels. Like you could maybe sign up for like Mash Monster 160, where that gripper rates 160. And, it'll probably be an altered cobalt at that point. Like it'll be the standard handles, but maybe with special stamps. And then, as time goes on, we'll monitor those specifications to make sure they're not falling off. And then we'd be in a position to like replace it with an exact gripper that met the same specifications, like to keep going, so that it really is, we can like hopefully the same kind of spirit of the Mash Monster certification, where everyone at every level like did the same thing, like as close to that as possible.
Perfect.
So I think that's like where in terms of a certification from like Cannon Powerworks or standard or the grip board, just the way things like flushed out here with the grip board, that opportunity that arose, I think at this point will dictate like that this energy will head towards an eventual Mash Monster certification, and just making that as good as it can be, but still in the spirit of what came before, for that certification.
Perfect. Another from Ben. Do you have plans to create more types of standards like the nickel?
Yeah. And I know a question's coming up from Jay Worley as well, that like, would we ever consider adding more like harder levels?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'll snipe that one from later and just combine it here because it fits. We've told this story on the grip board a little bit, but maybe not everybody's seen it. Both those levels, copper and nickel, are basically accidents. The nickel springs were supposed to be iron springs. We just got them from the manufacturer, and it's my own fault. So this is like the small business kind of thing where you like live and learn. So they ship them to us, they deliver them, and I don't check them that carefully. I was just real busy. I gave them to Tom. I'm like, Tom, here's the next set of iron grippers or iron springs, and they sat in his shop. Well, he goes to start making those and gives me the first batch, and they're way too hard to be iron because of the spread. So I kind of just had to like, take the punch. I didn't really have any recourse to go back and say like, hey, these don't meet specs that we talked about or something like that. I had them for like 8 months at that point. So now as a small business, like these are the kind of things that we have to troubleshoot. Like I'm just at that point trying to make make lemonade out of lemons, because there's nothing wrong with the springs. they're just not a strength I currently sell. So that's where nickel came from, was just a way to use those springs. And copper is the same way. Copper is just platinum springs that are too narrow. And that was not, that was, so now I'm more aware of like, okay, I got to check these. And that was more of like a, mutual thing with the manufacturer where they're just like, hey, this run turned out this way. Let's make a deal. So those weren't a mistake in the same light, but also not really made on purpose. The first new one that we'll probably make on purpose is above tungsten. We probably will have a gripper that there is a metal there that we didn't use that's available. Chromium, I think, is technically a harder metal than tungsten. So we'll come out with chromium eventually, where it'll be, I think it's the spring. I don't think it's quite the spring that the GHP 10 used. The grippers will probably be around like 225, around that range. So I think it'll be more like a Tedding Pro. I think it's that spring, where I believe the GHP 10 shares a spring with the Tedding World Class, in that closer to like higher 260. Like I think the GHP 10 averaged about 260. And we'll be shooting for like 230 for chromium. So again, not trying to make it any sort of like logical jump from tungsten, which averages like 195 at this point. We're really just trying to fill a gap of a gripper that's never really existed in like a real way. It's hard to get a Tedding Pro. It always was. And if you can't get a Tedding Pro that's like on the easy side, it's just not going to be in that 225-ish range that's never really existed. Fours pretty regularly go up to 220 or close, 215, 216, 218. Those numbers are pretty easy to find, but not 225. That basically doesn't exist. And it's a gripper. Another thing with standard, actually, and this will be funny for those that know we made unobtainium, but we wanted to make closable grippers. Like I didn't want to just make like a 260-pound gripper just for fun. But then it was kind of fun to make unobtainium where it's truly a novelty. There's just no chance anyone's going to close that. It's more or less for fun and like a wall piece that's really cool and just a discussion piece. And I really love those. But we've tried to focus on standard on making functional grippers that people want to train with. And I think at 225, I haven't changed my opinion about this because of Carl and just what he's accomplished with the number 4 certification and then the GHP 10 certification. Because that, I know I'm off on a tangent here from where the question started, but that was a question that I don't know why people asked us a lot, but that's one of the most common questions that I get from customers at Cannon Powerworks. They'll just email in and ask about, like, do you think XYZ is possible? Do you think someone will close a GHP 10? Do you think someone will certify on the number 4 soon? And, I would talk about the number 4, like, well, I know there's guys that are close. I could see that happening in my lifetime. I'm so excited about it. I just can't wait till that actually happens. And then Carl did it. Shout out to Carl.
Shout out to Carl. He's great.
But so that finally happened. But people would ask me, like, do you think anyone's going to close the GHP 10? And my answer was no. I honestly did not think that was possible. I wasn't trying to, like, I wasn't trying to be like negative or pessimistic about like what people are capable of. That just seemed too far out there based on like what anyone else was doing. I'd heard through the grapevine that like, oh, maybe Nathan had talked about like, well, I was closing my world class or something like that. So I knew there were like these like few people that maybe were bumping up against that range, but I just kind of didn't think it was possible. And then Carl did it. So it's just like, 4-minute mile or whatever. It's just like he did it. So then, I've had to kind of change my opinion about like what constitutes a functional gripper. And suddenly for a few people out there, yeah, maybe like 225 is more of a functional gripper. And now that I have like the process figured out, like before, like this was a hard project to get up and running. And like figure out like how do you do all the steps? Like how do you make it the same every time? Like how do you mount the handles so they're not uneven? Like they're kind of unique problems. And now that we have it figured out, it sounds a little more like fun to make a fun level. Where before it was just like it's all I can do to just like, make grippers people can train on. So I think the original question was like, are you going to make more levels? Yeah, there'll be more. Chromium's probably coming out. Then I think we're kind of out of metals. We're going to have to figure something else out because that was another thing that was just like how did it happen this way that like those nickel grippers were falling like in an area where we had skipped a metal. Like in deciding which metals to use, I had just decided to skip copper and decided to skip nickel, only to have grippers come back and fall right where those would be in the progression. So now we're kind of out of metals. There's some other ones we could get into, but if we can make some harder ones, we'll just have to, we can name them fun stuff or, more fictional metals or something like that.
Like the ones from the MCU, vibranium, or the one,
whatever it's called.
Or the one from Wolverine. I don't remember, but those metals.
Isn't that Wolverine, the adamantium, or
adamantium, yeah.
Yeah.
The fourth one from Ben, dynamometers. Would you ever consider making a CPW dynamometer? I'd love for him to make one with those standard gripper Nerling.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Because I think dynos are kind of cool. I have a baseline that like I take to like I used to go to powerlifting events that usually Christy was competing at, and I would run like a grip gauntlet booth just at the powerlifting meet. So those are always fun, and see guys walk up and just like bury the needle on the dyno, and and then they get their friends involved. So dynos are fun, and it's a much more like approachable way to talk to people about grip, where it's like, hey, can you close this one? Can you close this one? How do these two even compare? What does a rating mean? Like the dyno is just like to see that dial, like everybody's familiar with that, like whether it's a speedometer or whatever, like people understand that. And just instantly to the layperson, they're competing with their friends. Like I got this number, I got this number. So I really like dynos. There's a zillion of them now that are just like, they're the plastic models that are still digital. There's a lot of those. I've looked into maybe carrying one of those, but it's just like, at that point, it's like, why us when you can just buy one of those on Amazon Prime, get it free shipping for a better price than probably what we're going to be able to offer, and we're going to have to charge shipping. So it's like, we haven't brought one in for that reason. I'd want it to be an approachable price. I think that I'm trying to think about it. I think a flask is the most expensive thing we sell. And that's like, in a way, that's kind of the limit for me. Like, I'm not really trying to like put things out there that are hundreds of dollars. And some of these dynos cost like a few $100s. And I don't know. So to Ben's point, what I'd like to do is like have one that's based on this shape, first of all. Where just above it here is maybe like the dyno information, whether it's a dial or a digital readout or whatever. But if I could develop something like that, I think that's a dyno that we would eventually bring to the market, where it looks like a gripper, and then from here somehow you get a readout. I don't know quite how that works, because I don't know what would provide the resistance. I don't know what would provide the resistance if it's not a spring, because it can't start open and then you close it. Like dynos are usually a static shape for the most part, and you're just squeezing on it. So I guess, maybe like Fat Bastard had those like almost like parallel grippers that they made for a while. I don't know if it would have to look like that, but then you're really like, I would want it to be testing like a max strength in that closed position. So you've kind of, it almost be like closing a gripper that was in a choker. I don't know. Those are the dyno ideas I have. And I don't really know how to get it made, like I just, some of the stuff happens by accident. Like I'll go to a trade show and just run into somebody that sells a certain type of stuff. And I'm like, hey, you make sensors like that? Like where I could make a dyno? Like I'm going to admit something here that I've never really looked into. Like, I don't really know how a dyno works. Like, I don't know what's producing the number. Like, is there a load cell in there? You know, kind of like a crane scale or something where there's no moving parts, but somehow it gives a readout. Like, I don't know. I don't really, I guess, you know, maybe it's not that complex, but I can't say I know exactly what type of part is in there that results in the readout. So that's a maybe someday kind of project, but that's the kind of dyno that I think we would eventually do. Otherwise, I don't know how we could compete with just like the mass produced stuff that's already out there that you can just get on Amazon.
Perfect. There's another question from a friend from Chile. His name is Matias.
Okay.
He wants to know, I'd like to know what's the difference between the quality of a standard gripper and an Iron Mind gripper.
Yeah. You know, that's eye of the beholder in my mind. So like it's just, you know, what do you to the end user, like what do you value in a gripper? Like some people might not like the you know, dull colored spring. There's just no question. You can't deny the luster and shine of Iron Mind's, you know, GR8 spring. It's beautiful. We're just, you know, we weren't trying to create a product in that respect with standard that, you know, compared to anybody in any certain way, in terms of like a quality benchmark. You know, for a company like Iron Mind, for the number of grippers that they produce, just those, you know, that staggering volume, and just the amount of those that are just in the strike zone is you know, from a quality standpoint, like what are we going to do differently? Like it's really only eye of the beholder. Like, what do you want? So that would be a point of comparison. If you wanted extremely sharp knurling, well, standard's sharper. But there's other users who do not like that. We hear from a lot of people who are just like simply saying, this hurts my hands. And we talk to them about like, well, our feeling was like, you can always go down. You can't go up. So if it's sharp to a certain degree, you can go down from there and make it less sharp. But once that handle is produced, you can't really, there's not a way to make it sharper. So that was kind of our mindset where it's like, let's start extremely sharp because we know a sector of the market really wants that. And if you need to come smoother, if you need to go down smoother than that, then that's possible. Just hit it with a little bit of sandpaper, like go slow. It happens quick. Like you just take the tops off and it's not the same anymore. But that's like, you know, that's a personal preference that doesn't really go to quality. I don't think that's a quality concern between two brands. That's just a preference. So that was really what we were doing with standard. It was not about like anyone's quality. It wasn't about like, wait a minute, we can do this better. Like it was nothing like that. It was, can we plug like a gap that we see in what's currently offered, which was those numbers that just didn't exist.
Perfect. Let's get back to Australia with Joe Hudson. Have you ever looked into selling other grip equipment such as inch dumbbells?
Yeah, I have looked into that. It's another thing where it's just like the price points are so high and the door openers are so high, like to get a mold made is just not cheap. I know there's some out there, so it's like, is it possible to gain access to those? It would almost be like a benevolent thing where you're just trying to put more of that equipment into the system. And I'm interested in that. Like we you know, it's probably kind of hard to make money on them because the price points are already so high that it's like, you know, that on top of it being a small buyer pool anyway of people who like even want inch dumbbells, it's like how many of them can you even get made at once and that kind of thing. So we looked into it. And it would be really cool to do what like Jake Shalahy, I just really don't know how to pronounce his last name, but it's just really interesting what he was doing. And if there was a way to like find and take advantage of those molds that he already made, like those got to be out there somewhere. So that's how that could happen in my mind, is that someone reaches out to us, because I've tried to find him, but someone reaches out to us and says like, I've got the molds, like I just don't have the capital to like make more of these. So it's like, you know, that one is kind of unlikely just because of the barriers to get it up and running. The one that's more, you know, maybe what I thought he was asking about is like, you know, we could make a hub, we could make a pinch block, you know, we could have that stuff welded up, and it's just hasn't been a focus, because I think there's already good options. You know, you can go to Arm Assassin, you can get it from Ironmine, you can get it from Grip Genie. You know, we already offer 2 different hubs, like Grip Genies and Iron Mines. So it's kind of like that just hasn't in the same you know position we were in with grippers. Like, why go into that space unless there's a reason we're doing it? Like, a reason why we're not just like one more choice. I'd rather just support the brands that are already out there.
Perfect. I have a couple of questions related to GHP, since they are like having like a break from the production. I don't know the detail, but do you know when did GHP started? Was it like parallel to Iron Man, or when was it?
No, because Iron Man goes all the way back to the 90s, to the 1990s. So they've been around, you know, basically longer than anyone, except, you know, Tedding obviously was you know, doing this back towards the 60s, 1960s. And then I'm actually not crystal clear on when heavy grips came around. That's another thing a lot of people don't know. Like they've been in this community like pretty much as long as anybody. But I don't know exactly when they came around. But so Iron Mine predates almost everybody. And GHP, kind of from my other story, I believe started in 2012. If it wasn't 2012, it was 2011, because I can't quite remember how long it took us to get Cannon Powerworks up and running. But that was at that same time that transition was taking place, where he moved from doing the Gripper Superstore into just Gillingham High Performance as his focus. So that would have been like 2011, 2012.
And why does GHP grippers feel different compared to other brands?
I think pretty much everyone says it's the spread. So they do tend to be a little bit wider than, you know, their like peers at any one level. So that will make the gripper feel harder in the hand. It also shows up in the rating. You're just doing more work.
Perfect. And I didn't read all the like Gripboard posts lately, but
Yeah.
Are they like suspending the production like for good, or is it's just a break? Because I'd love to buy more of their stuff, but
Yeah.
what happened?
Yeah, from Wade's post and in my contact that I've had from him, it doesn't sound like a break. I believe they have like halted production, like they have my understanding of his announcement was basically GHP is closing. I just feel like, you know, maybe it's my own. I love his brand. His grippers are really popular. I would love to see him, you know, continue in some kind of capacity. But his announcement did not seem to be announcing that, that there was something to like, you know, hey, there was no like, hey, maybe next year. There was none of that. So I think that would take another announcement from him to like put some hope behind that. His announcement seemed like that they were closing. I mean, in what he was presenting us in terms of like, you know, do you want the rest of the levels 2 and 8 that we have, and then that's everything. I mean, that was how it was presented to us. We do have some junior grippers that are going to be coming out. He offered us his parts. So it was already made springs and already made handles, with the stipulation, like, do you want this stuff? It's just that once you build it, just don't sell it as GHP. So I'm having, like our guy that makes standard, he's going to engrave CPW into the end of the handle. So those junior grippers will be from us, but it's GHP's parts. My understanding is that was the last of that. So it feels like this is it, which is, that's kind of heartbreaking, and it's a beloved brand for sure. So I'd love to see, even if it was isolated projects or something, like if he had a chance to do a limited run or something, that would be cool. But that didn't seem to be included in the announcement that he was making.
And the certification is still going on, right?
So that's,
like,
well,
so far?
I don't know. That's, he mentioned in his post, because I had reached out to him, hey, what's the fate of that? We've got our pool of Mash Monster judges at the Gripboard already, and he could give us any like protocol that he wanted. Like, I want these 4 things to be covered in the video, or whatever it is. Like, we could follow any protocol that he wants. And he mentioned in his announcement that I had reached out to him, that maybe there's an avenue there, because he could certainly be added as one of those, added to the judging pool as well, and chip in on any certifications that he wanted. But if he just didn't have the capacity, or just whatever, the certification could live on. It does raise the question of, no new grippers would maybe hit the market. So at that point, everybody's certifying on a gripper they already had, and those are only getting older and older. I don't know. It's there hasn't been any news on that yet. But I'd like to see that continue. It's a cool certification.
Yes. Well, we will see what the future says to us.
Yeah.
I want to go back to to my favorite grip podcast, The Grip Show. If I have a question from Mr. Zach Mullins.
Yeah, hey Zach.
I think this is one of the most asked questions for this interview, Matt, and I try to just put 1 or 2 about this. But what's the future of the grip board, and what it means to him moving forward?
Yeah, I absolutely love the Gripboard community. I mean, it's how I got into grip. I just have always been so thankful that it's like like a safe place to go talk about this kind of stuff. Because I think everybody's into this, has had the experience, like, where you're with your friends, and someone finds out, like, oh, well, he trains his grip, and then then you're trying to talk to someone about that, and it's like, it's just, it's not the most common thing. So, I've always been so thankful for the grip community and what Bill has built there. And I think, in terms of Bill, like, founding the board and making it a certain way, it's the community aspect of it that is most important to me. And, like, that is what I've always been trying to facilitate as a moderator. And then now as the administrator, like, that is my main focus for the grip board, is the way that it is a community. So just a place for people to come together and talk about this, to announce contests and contest results, to compete with each other, to have a training log. We'll have the Mash Monster certification back, so a place to have a respected and like the longevity of that certification. Those kind of things, I think, are what is important to me about it. So in terms of, like, a vision for it, I guess at this point it's just like, don't mess up what Bill already perfected, right? Like, he made such, like, a great place for us. So to I just want to facilitate that going forward, and, like, have an environment where people are included, and that support is given, and that people are uplifted. Like, that's, like, my vision for the board, is to like, continue to find ways to facilitate that sense of community, and just, like, try to bring more people in.
Perfect. And This one is from Jayland Worley, Mr. Jayland.
Yeah. What's up,
He
Jay?
wants- Hey,
Jay's a buddy of
Jay-
mine. We text quite a bit.
Yeah?
From when I held a contest at the grip board where I gave away actually this gripper, this number 3 that rated 137.
Oh,
Yeah, the lowest new number 3 that I've ever rated. So I held a contest at the grip board where it was like this like riddle, that was a poem, and if you could figure it out, like you could win this gripper. And then I actually bought it back from him. So like I've got it, but just in the course of that, like the answer ended up being like a connection to Nintendo like Legend of Zelda game. So we started talking about that because we both played that game, and that's what allowed him to like win the gripper. It led him to the answer, was his knowledge of that game. So we started talking about that. Then now he's just recently he's a moderator of the grip board now. We added him to the staff. Yeah. So and I text with Jay quite a bit. So what's up, Jay?
nice. He wants to know, can he share any news about the new Mash Monster ladder?
Yeah, so we've talked about it quite a bit just throughout the thing here, but just to talk about it directly, the issue with bringing it back is making the grippers. So like it has to be something that's repeatable. It has to be something that that I'm in control of in terms of like I was talking about, like, so we have like, let's say there's the level 160, and then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, we need to swap it out to keep this having a semblance of everybody did the same thing. I need to predictably be able to do that. So from the outset here, I need to like make something that I know I can do again, right? So that's part of the barriers. The other things are like, do we add a setting block? But I feel like the other main certifications, Ironmind and GHP, already use a setting block, and I've liked that. I've always enjoyed that the Mash Monster was like just parallel or wider. I don't think it's that hard to judge, but it is a chance right now to switch to a setting block if we want to. So do we do that? I'm leaning towards no, because I kind of want to keep I kind of want it to be in the same vein, with only freshening the things that we had to, which was so that we knew it was an aging population of grippers, right? Like the level 1 especially had been in service for 20 years, right? There's almost exactly 20 years between the first and last certification, which, can you name them? Can you name number 1 and the first one and the last one?
The first one, I think it was maybe Richard Sorin.
No, he was the first COC, so he's first Ironmind certification.
Well, no, I
think
for
those of you at home, can you do this? Like I know you're live.
Let me guess for the last one. The last one, maybe it was Emil B. Betch, maybe.
That's close. I don't think he was last. And I hope I'm not wrong here, but so the first one was Heath Sexton, right? So he was number 1. The last one, I believe, was Austin Setter. And I don't know if I pronounced his last name wrong, but I think it was Austin was the last one. And then Clint Ziegler was signed up when the certification closed down and didn't get a chance to do it. So we've reached out to him. I felt really bad about that. Sorry, Clint. He kind of did get screwed. He was signed up and didn't get to do it. So he's gonna get first crack at the new one that rolls out if he wants to. If he's ready to sign up at the time, he'll get to go right away. Yeah, I think it was Heath and then Austin last. But so over 20 years, it's an aging population of grippers. And it's like, okay, at this point, like, do we try to switch to one of the backups? Do we I don't know. It was just like it was also a question of like just in talking with Bill, like just what in terms of transferring these, like what's possible. Like I don't know. There was a lot of things we had to figure out. So in making a new certification, I I would like to keep the things that can stay the same. So I think in that light, we'll probably do parallel set still, because I think that's easy enough to judge. I believe one of the major things that I'm going to change is you'll be able to jump to any level. I don't think you'll have to do any certain thing in any order. We just might have some sort of screening process, kind of like the level 0, where it's like, okay, great, you signed up for the, Mash Monster 200, but I don't really see any evidence that you've closed anything over a 2. So can you send us some video where it's like, that you're near that level, and sure, you can sign up, you can go straight to level 200. So it might be something like that. And I think that's the direction I'm heading with the levels. I don't know where it'll start, but it'll be like, 130, 140, 150, 160, 170, 180, 190, 200, right? You'll have the progression. Where quite a few of those that have overlap with where the original grippers were thought to be. Everyone, kind of assumes level 2 was around 160. Right? Like level 3 is around 180, we think, right? So
actually, there was a sad story that I shared with Jayland in our episode, and that was that Jayland reached me like, "Hey, I want to go to Gripsport Latino and certify on the level 8 live."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah.
And in the same time, I was preparing to apply for the level 1, and I was like doing a MMS with my Cobalt 157, and I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, let's do it together." And then
Yeah,
they
you were ready.
killed, they closed the certification, and I
Yeah,
was like,
sorry,
"Oh,
man.
no!" But I am ready for the next one. I am
Yeah.
waiting to know the news and going straight for it. I am
Good.
like this,
Yeah.
like a fly. Let's move to Europe. Emil B. Betch. I don't know if I mispronounced, but
I'm not
Emil.
sure either. Yeah. For some reason, I always think of it as Beck, but I'm not sure that's right.
Like Beck, like Johann Sebastian Bach. Sure.
Maybe it's like
Yes.
that. Yeah. Either way, Emil, hey.
Yes. He says, I'm especially curious about the idea of a gripper station being located in Europe to make the shipping cheaper.
Yeah, that's another thing that might be possible with like a new like a modernized Mash Monster cert is, so if we can control the specs on any of them, then presumably we could have a couple sets. It does add a little bit of like gray area to like, how it's kind of always been that everybody did the same thing. So it's like I would hate for it to separate into like, I'm Mash Monster 180, and then, oh, well, so am I. I'm Mash Monster 180. Well, no, but you did the European one. And it's like, the intention is that it's the same thing, but there's just a chance there for it to be thought of as two separate things. But then at the same time, is there anything wrong with that? So that's kind of one of the unanswered questions at this point. I would also love that, because it is just like stupid expensive to ship just like one small thing. It's like it's the minimum rate is like $40. You just can't get around it. But then you want it to be accountable. You want it to be shipping that has tracking, where the carrier knows it exists and isn't going to lose it. So you don't want to go with like the cheapest option. Otherwise, honestly, it could get lost. And frankly, like Bill and I talk about this, that we just cannot believe in the 20 years of the Mash Monster certification that we didn't lose a gripper. That just one somewhere didn't go missing. We had a couple scares, but ultimately they always showed up. So that's, I would love, that's in my mind. That's, Emil, it's on the table as something that might be possible with the freshened up certification. I'm just not positive about the logistics or what it would mean for like keeping two separate lists. I would just like it to be all the same list, but I don't want there to be like asterisks or anything like this one was international or anything. If we did it, I would want it to be all in. I think that's something that hasn't been fleshed out yet, but it's certainly a possibility going forward, because that really would streamline things for everybody else that isn't in the United States.
Yeah. Sorry if I move my hands like
Yeah,
strongly because there are a couple of mosquitoes right here, and I was
yeah,
like,
man.
go okay.
Yeah, we know mosquitoes in Minnesota. Luckily, it's the time of year that there aren't any, but
We are in the opposite
yeah,
weather.
yeah,
It's
you
like
got it
wow,
bad.
it's super hot
Yeah,
here right now.
yeah, Minnesota, the mosquito is Minnesota's state bird.
Really?
Not really, but I'm just joking. We got plenty of big mosquitoes.
I have a personal question about the Mash Monster because I watched the Mash Monster Gripper auction and I was
Yeah,
like, wow, uh, how much will like one of the lots would be like $1,000? I don't know, and it caught my
yeah,
attention because I saw like the slots and I thought it was going to be like slot one mm1, slot 2 mm2,
yeah.
and I saw that they were backup grippers. Why were there backup for the grippers?
Well, that was just when Bill created the certification. Just it's actually some good forethought. He just had the thought like, what if the main one goes missing? Like, what if? So he, when these were produced, multiples were made, except for certain levels. When levels 7 and 8 were added, just for whatever reason, they didn't do backups. Maybe because at that point they had so much history into the certification, and they realized at that point, well, we've never needed a backup. Let's just, let's not order backups. And then level 10 doesn't have a backup either, I don't think. So I think it was just like fourth, he had the vision to think like, what if we lose one of these? So that's the only reason there's backups, is there was just a concern that maybe they would need one. But yeah, most people don't know that those exist, because we never needed one.
Perfect. Another topic, Matt, it's the gripper calibrations. No, sorry, ratings
You got it.
and variation. I am aware of the experiment that you did. I think there were like 18,000 reps for the gripper to break. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
But
it was closer to, it was over 30. It was like 33,000 reps. It was around there.
33,000. Okay. Well, they always ask me here in Chile, like, hey, you are closing number 3, and what happens after a year of using it? Actually, Salvador, my friend from Chile,
Yeah.
he wants to know if will a rated gripper, like let's say rated 150, rated by you, will it mark a different number after 1 year of use?
Yeah, you're gonna love this answer.
Extensive?
Yeah, you're gonna love this answer. I'm gonna go with maybe. Because it depends on the use. And it depends on like like, was the spring maintained? Because that can matter. It doesn't always matter. I call it, so like on a gripper, like I always kind of like think of these as like the armpits, right? Like that's where the friction is. Like when you close a gripper, the most of the friction is right here, because like the top of the coil actually opens up. If you look when you close a gripper, the top of the coil opens up, and most of the friction's like in the armpits here. So a rusty spring, I've noticed, like we'll get stuff that's like really funky on rate and return. Like people will send stuff in and it's just like completely rusted out. And we'll sometimes like take that chance to like take a rating, really clean up the spring, get all the rust off of there, and then take another rating. And like sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. And I believe that's because unless the rust is located like right there in those armpits and is somehow contributing to like more friction, then it doesn't really matter that the spring is rusty. But a maintained clean spring is your best chance for a stable rating. So then it's down to usage. How much was the gripper used? So if it sits on the shelf for a year, like we'll buy gripper collections where it was stuff that was rated by us, and I always rate the stuff again. And sometimes the number's exactly the same. Sometimes it's a few pounds off, but it's a lighter gripper. It's like a number 1 or something, and you can tell by how it looks that they banged out zillions of reps on that thing. So that's about usage. And what I talked about before, where the usage does put some amount of stress on every rep, right? That's an amount of fatigue on the spring that will accumulate over the course of like hundreds and thousands of reps. So for the average person that's just training with these things, I just wouldn't worry about that too much. I think if you have, it's a weird thing. Like if you have the grippers that you put the most reps on are probably like your like rep grippers anyway, right? Like the ones that you're always going to put 3 sets of 10 reps on. So it's going to keep going up and up and up. And in that case, once you know the rating and can compare it to other ones in your collection, doesn't matter if that rating moved. On the other hand, if it's your goal gripper, maybe you really are concerned with what exactly is the rating, but how many reps are you going to be putting on your goal gripper, right? Like how do you get thousands of reps on your goal gripper unless it's one of those cases where you started out and couldn't close it to, so that was your goal, and now you can put 3 sets of 10 reps on it because you just got so much stronger. So it's like this weird in between where like what is that gripper going to be where you like really care if the rating moved, right? If it's a goal gripper, then you probably didn't put a ton of reps on it in the first place. So there's a pretty good chance that number's right by where it was. They just don't move that quickly. They just can move over time. And that seems to be like kind of a unique thing to certain grippers anyway. Not certain brands, but just like, every once in a while I'll get a gripper back through rate and return or buy it from someone, and the number will be really different than the tag that's on there. And, maybe by like 4 or 5 pounds. And we'll talk to them about, did you use this a lot? And it's like, well, I used it some, like they're not really saying they used it a lot. So I don't know. It can move. And I don't know that a lot of people are getting their grippers re-rated. I would maybe do that in a contest setting. And that's a service that I don't think a lot of people know is out there. I talk about it at the grip board sometimes. But if you have a collection of grippers that you're planning on using for a contest, we'll re-rate it all for free if you want, so you know what the numbers are, just in case it's stuff you've been using and maybe the numbers moved. We'll work with you on that to re-rate those and get them back to you for the contest. Or we have a set you can just borrow where it's all Iron Mine grippers every 5 pounds from 30 to 225. And that set is available for promoters to use.
If I travel to the US this year, I'll bring my grippers and take your word to re-rate some of them, because I am building my the whole line of to promote contests here in Chile. So sounds really great.
I don't remember exactly what the numbers were. I'm just going to pull these off the top of my head. But even so, that million rep gripper is an example that kind of answers the question, where it started out at like 149 with just straight out of the package. And if a gripper is going to lose something right away, it's usually literally like practically on the first rep. So like after we put like 30 reps on that gripper, I think it was 148. And then over the course of like the next 33,000 reps, I think it finished at like 146 or something like that. So that's materially the same gripper, right? I mean, it's right there in the neighborhood where over that many reps, like that's how much you lost. So they're pretty stable, but it can move with use.
Excellent. Another question from Salvador. How do you think that other companies rate their grippers, like Shinji Wanjia from AliExpress from China, or Ironman with their face values, which are way different from the RGC system?
Yeah. Some of this is not very well known. And I'm saying, including to me, I just like, for example, heavy grips or something like that. I don't really know how they arrived at those poundages, except they seem to be the original iteration of this set of grippers that goes 100, 150, 200, 250. I've heard that was inch pounds. So they did some kind of torque measurement in inch pounds, and that was roughly the inch pounds. And there's a misconception that that they're taking any fresh numbers. So however long ago when they went into business, they decided like these are the levels. And to my knowledge, it's not like they're taking more data. or making sure that it's any certain way. The 100, 150, 200, 250, that kind of might as well be a name. You know, they could have called it the gorilla, or the, you know what I mean? Like it gives you just as much information if they're not going to tell you like where the number came from. I think everybody's heard, I actually don't know if it's urban legend or what. I heard that Richard Soren was tasked by Iron Mine to like, hey Richard, like give us some idea of like how hard these are to close. And what I think I've heard like through the grip board or whatever, just over the years, is, you know, he did a really similar thing to how ratings work, where you support the gripper somehow and hang weight over it until it closes. And it's just, the difference is he used the middle of the handle. Well, that's not any worse or any better than anything else. Like it takes more weight than hanging it on the end of the handle. But it's not like one is more intrinsically true or something like that for how you're closing it in the hand. It's a perfectly good number. So at least Iron Mine, like it seems like they, you know, had a method to like, let's try to find a way to find a number that makes sense. But then, for example, when they came out with the tweeners, like 0.5, 1.5, 2.5, I think they just divided the number of like what was on either side. They just averaged it, and the 0.5 is in the middle. I don't think they took new data. You know, it probably doesn't matter because those numbers kind of fall in the middle anyway, like through our numbers. But it's just like, it does create the problem of comparing two different brands, which of course any one brand maybe isn't concerned with that. Like what is Heavy Grips care how it relates to a GHP? Like why would that, you know, that's kind of our concern as grip enthusiasts. So I think that's where like the interest in the measurement lies. I don't think there should be any pressure or any like I don't think the thought process should be, why doesn't a company like align to something, or why don't they give a measurement in a certain way? I think that's fine for like us to do that as enthusiasts, to like try to find a way to compare them brand to brand. But I guess to the original question, like for some of these other brands, I don't know how they arrived at their poundage estimates. They don't seem to publish that information, and at this point, like a lot of it's just a reskin of the same springs that you can get in China. That's the 150, 200, 250, 300, like those levels are just, that's how the factory sells them. And everybody's just using that terminology for them.
Perfect. Do you know if Hey Grips is from China or from another country?
I believe the company is based in Canada, but the grippers are from China. They're made in China, and they're not. That's not a secret. It's stamped on the package. But those are made in China.
Perfect. There's another question about gripper training from a friend from Chile, Matias. I know that you have a full article, and I must say I love your articles. From now on I chalk my hand like just here after I read your article, and it's really useful.
I did that. You know, it had to be for the photo. It had to be like really distinct. Right. So like I'm not that careful when I'm going after it, but yeah, for the photo, it had to be like, what are we illustrating here? So it had to be like trying to show what we wanted to illustrate. But yeah, the how to set a gripper.
When I do it, I am like, yeah, I am putting like the chalk right here, and then I get chalk on these fingers, and I'm like, oh no, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And I cleaned them to make it just as the article. Well, the articles are great. I always read them. Correct me if I am wrong, but I remember that in your dog leg article, you said that it didn't really matter, right?
No, not a thing.
Well, Mari wants to know if there's any specific technique for closing grippers with your left hand, because he feels that it's mechanically harder to close a gripper with your left hand. What's your take on that, Matt?
Well, it is actually mechanically harder. So grippers are like, the spring is not symmetrical, right? So on this side, when you close it in this hand, the spring turns a certain way. Well, it still heads that way when it's on this side. So now here, this closing the gripper on the correct side, like a right-handed gripper, has the handles come in a certain way. Where in your left hand, you're working against that. You're pulling it like across in a way that is like not as smooth as when it's on the other side. So like, for example, Ironmind offers their left turn grippers where the spring goes the other way, so you can get like a similar experience for your left hand. So he's right. He's not crazy. You are experiencing something there that you do have to work against that skew when you put a right-handed gripper in your left hand. So that's maybe one tip, is pick up a left-handed gripper. There's only a few out there. There's the Ironmind stuff. Some of the stuff that's made in China just incidentally has that opposite wound spring. Early Grip Genies some of them have an opposite wound spring, but they're kind of hard to find. This might not be the best advice, but it's kind of how I approach my training. Just don't worry about it. I never really used any left-handed grippers. I just always, I would do a set with my right hand and just try to do the same thing with my left hand. My left hand is always lagged behind with grippers. It's always ahead with pinching. So it's like, I feel like we can have different strengths. I always tried to keep them even, and I always trained both hands, because I know some people don't. But I always tried to train both hands, but my left hand was always just a little bit behind. And I was just fine with that. I would certify on things with my right hand.
The right is the gripper hand, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the left was the pinch hand.
In my case, my left is for V-bar. V-bar is really high compared to my right hand. Yeah. So yes. Matt, speaking about feats, I have a question from Jet Johnson. What are some of the most impressive feats of grip strength he has seen over the years online?
Yeah. Hey, first of all, what's up, Jed? The feats thing is tough for me. Okay, so this is a good time to mention. So, we're trying to set up for this podcast, right? For this interview. And you're like, hey, Matt, send me a photo and like pick a song to put with, thing. And it's like, you almost can't, like, that's like suffocating to me to like try and like pick one song to like go or something like that. Like I really struggle with favorites. It's just anything like, hey, what's your favorite movie? I almost can't answer that question. I'm just like unable to do it the way like my mind works. So I know like that's actually something I'll mention. Hey, Jed here. That just floors me. Like when on the episode you had with him, or maybe it was on the Grip Show. Because if you had him on.
Yes, I had him like in the season 2. So yeah, and he spoke in Spanish. It was a really fun one.
That's right. Yes, I do remember that. Yes, that was epic right there. I'm not going to be able to do that. But just his mind for like feats and lifts and when it happened, and like that it's not even for him, it's for other people. Like, hey, do you remember at this contest on this year when like so and so did 3 attempts, and on that second attempt it's just like it's all in there. That just floored me, and that's like not how I am with my memory for that kind of stuff. So like in terms of feats that I remember, it's more like people that I just like, when I think back, it's like I don't even remember exactly what they did, but it's just like they stuck with me. So it's like Timu from Finland. I remember early on, I was just enthralled with what he was doing on grippers. It was all so impressive to me. Like as he came through the Mash Monster ladder, the stuff Paul Knight was doing, Aaron Corcoran, just his like breadth of like, he just seemed to have no weaknesses in terms of like, bending, pinch, grippers, thick bar. He just seemed to have no weaknesses. Bob Sundin, his like inch lifting and blob lifting sticks out to me. Cody Burns, like just when I felt like I actually met him before, like I think it was his first grip contest. Like Adam Glass had pulled him out of somewhere and got him to a contest in Minnesota, and Cody was there, and just like kind of went, I think it was his first foray. Like I think that was very early for him, and then he just skyrocketed in strength. And like when he came out of nowhere and took the two-hand pinch title, that just blew my mind. Jed's feats, like specifically with Jed, it's like medleys where it's like you'll see contest results and it's like there were 25 items in the medley. Second place lifted 13 of them. Jed lifted them all. Like, so like Jed with medleys sticks out to me. So it's things like that, that stick out to me as feats where it's like I might not even remember exactly what the person did, but it's like people stick out like along the way. And even there, it's just like, I'm just like agonizing right now that I'm not thinking of the ones I want to remember. I'm not thinking of like the right things or something like that, or there's stuff I should have mentioned or shout outs I should have given. But those are the ones that just come like easy, I guess, to the front of my mind. But I'm not great with feats and like who did what and like and what happened when and things like that.
I understand. There was another question from Jet, more related to grip competitions.
Yeah.
He said he has talked about running grip competitions in Minnesota in 2024.
Yeah, I've pretty much the whole time we've had Cannon Powerworks, I've thought about running a contest. Like it'll happen. It always kind of, it's one of those things where it's like in my mind, I'm finally like, okay, I have time for this. I'm ready. I put enough thought into like, events and prizes and just venue and whatever it is, and then something else will come along. So it's like I would have said that we were definitely going to have a contest in 2024, and it still might happen. And that's the most recent thing that I talked to Jed about. But then it's like suddenly like here comes the grip board, and that has been like more of a time commitment than what I just was worried about. I was worried about the time commitment because between Cannon Powerworks and just other stuff like making products, just in any of the stuff I'm involved in, I have a concern of like spreading myself too thin, and then you're not doing anything that well. So it's like that's a thing that's like on the short list for me. I would love to hold a contest. And Jed's been really supportive. He's just a wealth of knowledge for, what can a contest look like? What does it take to run it smoothly? What has he learned from running so many and being in the community so long? So it's good to have him, just as someone's like kind of, ear you can chirp at. So it's going to happen, and maybe even still this year. But like just a priority for me right now is figuring out the grip board and figuring out the Mash Monster certification, like kind of as a short-term thing. So it's just like now running a contest got bumped again. And I know it doesn't have to be, like, it's one of those things like where like, as long as you can get 3 dudes together in a garage, well, then you got a contest, right? So I'm admitting I don't really have barriers to just like doing a contest. It's just in my mind, it's what I would hope to present is like a larger affair than that.
Well, one of the final questions, Matt. We have been doing this for a long time, and I appreciate you.
We're creeping up on 3 hours here. So if anybody is like, if there's viewers out there who like stuck with this, man, I feel sorry for you.
I am sure like I am sure that in example, Zach Mullins it's going to be right here listening, and as a like interesting, curious piece of information. Do you like the Lord of the Rings?
I like that kind of genre. I have not seen the movies. I started reading the books and didn't make it. I know I've read The Hobbit, but haven't seen the movie. So it's like I'm more familiar with it in just like a pop culture, like I appreciate what it is. I'm certainly nerdy in that way, if you even want to call it that. I'm into that kind of thing. But I just that one for me, I haven't like really dove into.
Well, the Return of the King, the third movie of the first trilogy,
Okay.
it lasts like 3 hours and 30 minutes. Our episode with Zach, if it was like full, it was
Yeah.
3 hours and 35, longer than
Hey.
Lord of the Rings. So really long ass
Perfect.
episode. I don't
Yeah.
know if anyone has seen like the full 2 pieces of video, but it was long. Yeah, long
Okay.
conversation. I wanted to know if the Gripboard shirts are still available, or right now are they like in a pause? And if you do you have in your plans like selling them? What's the state of the Gripboard shirts, because they are beautiful?
Yeah, we touched on it earlier, just when you asked about Cannon Powerworks shirts.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's none that exists now. It's something that I hope to get back up and running for the Gripboard, where there would be a small amount of apparel where you could, maybe choose a shirt, choose a, you know, cold weather, what's it called? Like a stocking cap, just whatever it is, like just a few things to have the logo on, with the #1 in grip strength or just whatever else it says. We do hope to bring back some apparel for the grip board just as a way to have other sources of income for the grip board, and also, just enthusiasts like people in the community who want the stuff, just to be able to provide it to them.
Perfect. Matt, do you happen to have any question for me?
Yeah, I pitched the one at you. That's still, because you asked, like, is there anything you'd want to ask me? It's a big thing for me because I'm not really on social media much. I kind of I deleted Instagram. I've never had a Facebook account. I don't love that format for myself in terms of like consuming like connections with other people. I like the grip board. I like actually talking to people. But it definitely, there's no question that like the grip board is kind of a dinosaur in terms of like the technology for how people get together now, like how people meet up in social media. Because in a way, like the forum is social media, but just not in those like small little consumables like Instagram, TikTok, like that kind of thing. So a lot of the population, I think, that could be a lot of the activity that could be happening at the grip board, I think has fragmented and like moved into these apps as they got more popular. And I don't know, at least with people my age, I think there's some pushback against that, where they realize like these apps aren't that fulfilling, and I don't like scrolling through them. And I would rather just like have a discussion with someone and like type out full sentences and that kind of thing. So my question to you is like, as like from the grip board's perspective, how do we court those people to like come back? Like, come like bring your content back to the grip board, or like, instead of posting your PRs on Instagram, like what if they were in a training log again at the grip board, and you could receive feedback from other people in the community, that kind of thing. So that's my question to you, is like, what would you like to see like offered by the grip board that would like, maybe even especially like the people who have gone out to social media, like how do we start bringing them back? Or even not that they left and or anything like that, but I just feel like some of it went there.
I think, well, let's say I am like I am in the middle of the generation. I am 30. So
Okay.
I grew up with Facebook. I grew up with Instagram, but I mean, grew up. Instagram came out when I was like 18.
Yeah.
So I was like into forums before. I was like into reading a lot. So for me, it's not like that uninviting to have forums like this. But
Right.
when I meet kids who are like in their 20s today, it's like, oh man, two things. It's in English and it's hard to get the information. So, in my opinion, if you had like the least amount of clicks to reach to the content of the grip board and a lot of images and a lot of like big letters, kind of like the Cannon Powerworks page. It's like,
Okay.
hey, I come here to buy a gripper. And when I come to my cell phone, the first thing I see is pre-rated grippers. Perfect. I go straight to the point.
Yeah.
And in example, I think that people that joins, well, I don't know the main reasons why people join the grip board.
Yeah.
I did it because I knew about the Mash Monster ladder,
Yeah.
and the first thing I wanted to know was how to certify. What is it about? Who's who on the ladder? And it's kind of hard to find everything right there. I consider myself like a really stubborn guy and really curious.
Yeah.
So I reached many doors like, hey, how do I do this? How do I do this? To many guys all over the world,
That's
and
good
that's
feedback.
how I knew I that's how I knew where to go, which was the
Yeah.
post, which was the link and things like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the information it's kind of hard to find. You have to dig deep. So if you go to like you want to learn something from Gripboard, you have to do many clicks. So that's like uninviting for the new generations and for people who's not into who doesn't know English. Side
Okay.
note:
Yeah. That's good feedback.
if you can have a button which is like switch to Spanish, much more people will come, or to
Yeah.
another languages. Well, I mean, my mission is to bring grip sport and grippers to the Spanish people, of course. But if they can go straight to the source and it's on Spanish, much more people will come by. And I think it's important to make an exercise of questioning, like, what's the grip board for? It could be like for the certifications, for learning about the training, for knowing more about the community, for
Yeah.
connecting with other people. Something
Yeah.
that used to be on the grip board and I miss is that you used to have that map and you could see the map and see, in example, you are from
Yeah.
New York. Oh, you can go upstate and they are three guys. You can go to Florida and they are like X guys. When I went to the US for the first time, I went to Florida and I didn't knew anyone from Florida to
Yeah.
like meet any group guy. The only guys that I knew was like Ricardo Magni,
Yep.
Jonoka from Hawaii,
Okay.
and then Jet Johnson, and it
Yeah.
was like, damn, if I knew where is the
I remember that
closest,
member map.
it's
I
like
remember that map. I don't know if that's still. I'll poke around in the and see if that's still an option. I don't know if it is. I don't know if the like software provider like took that down, or if it was just like taken off because we can edit like what's in the menus and stuff like that, like any other website. So I don't know if it's just. I don't know about that. I'll check into the member map. That's an interesting callback. I remember that map.
yes. And another thing that I would like to add about the grip board, which is like the most common question I hear from people here in Chile and South America. Uh, it calls my attention that when they think of grip, first thing they think is grippers.
Okay.
And in my case, the first thing I knew about the grip sport was the hub, the Rolling Thunder, and then I knew about the grippers and the certifications. But now, after the pandemic, all the kids want is to certify on the number 3 with a credit card.
Yep.
So if they are arriving to the grip world wanting to know how to work out and how to certify on the number 3, it would be like a big sign of hey, do you want to be good at the number 3 with the credit card?
Yeah.
I am not a big fan of credit card. I like deep sets, and
Yeah.
Match Monster was my favorite when it was online. So please bring it back, Matt.
Yeah, we're working
so
on it.
so if I can like get the information that calls me the most just when I arrive to
Yeah.
the site, instead of our what's the word that you use, like our great sponsors, Sorinex. It's like the first thing you see.
Yeah. Well, and have you been there
uh,
recently? Like, when have you visited recently?
I haven't for a while.
Because I did do a reorganization of like how the forums are laid out, and we renamed a couple of them to like make more sense. For example, there was a forum called Community Records and Stats, which did not contain any community records or stats. It was the
Damn.
it was the grip feats section. So that was just always kind of like misnamed. So we changed a couple names like that, and I reorganized, like regrouped a couple of them. And now, because that was part of the transition from Bill to me, that we're I probably won't have sponsors in the same way that we did before. They that method of like sponsoring the board certainly worked. But I just have like different ideas for like kind of ways to raise money, where those, we won't have those sponsors probably in the same way going forward. So now they're still there, but they're moved down to the bottom until I kind of figure out like what to do with that content. But now the first thing at the top is the Gripboard. Like, so that was important to me, that like the main part of the community is the first thing at the top.
And as a final feedback,
Yeah.
there's something that it's gold to me since
Yeah.
I live away from the US. In the section of wanted to buy, I have found some great deals.
Yeah.
Impressive. In example, the Iron Mind pinch block. I spent $50 on an Iron Mind pinch block versus like spending 150 to get one to Chile.
Yeah.
And people don't know about that. Or maybe another example, I have one Warren Tetting Reaper sold by Allen Hynek, and it
Okay.
was $40. 40. It's like, dude.
Nice. Yeah.
I always tell, well, I am kind of I studied business in high school, so I love to sell and trade stuff, buying plates, selling plates, etc.
Yeah.
I think that if one day I get bored of Gripsport, the only thing I'll keep is that Warren Tetting gripper from Allen, of course.
Yeah.
So I
It's a
think
great collectible.
the deals. I don't know if you want to make it like a thing that just the old members know, or if you want to give it like a more visibility. But the Gripboard shop or marketplace, it's a place with great deals. So
yeah, one thing to keep in
great.
mind too, that we do this for a lot of international customers. If there's something that you see like on the Gripboard, that like, hey, maybe you want to pick that up. And I also notice a lot of sellers on the Gripboard will specify like no international. Just listeners out there, if you're international, you could have that item shipped to Cannon Powerworks. So then like it would open up what's possible for you to buy. So if they posted something and they say no international, just buy it anyway and have it shipped to us. And we can consolidate that stuff for you and then put it in a package. Like maybe you want to order from us anyway. We can get it to you that way.
Excellent. For the ones that listen this part of the interview, they will have this possibility. Well, sometimes since I am a stubborn guy and really curious, sometimes I tell people, please, I paid $100 for the shipping, but send it to Chile.
Yeah.
And they do. Sometimes they do. They are like, okay, well, if you want to
Yeah.
pay 100, it's up to you. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm crazy. I will do it.
Yeah. Send it our way and we'll help you on shipping.
Perfect. Matt, it has been a really great pleasure to me, an honor to have you as a guest. And as always, last words belong to you. Which message would you like to share with the audience to finish this lovely interview?
How about drink more Ovaltine? No, that's a Christmas movie joke. I just thought I'd throw it in there. Hey, I just want to say I love this community. Though that would be my parting thought. I love being a part of it. I love doing what I can for it, servicing it through Cannon Powerworks, any of it, the grip board. I love this community. It never disappoints.
Excellent. Well, thanks to everyone. Thanks everyone who's watching, and see you soon for another episode of Gripsport Latino. Give me 1 second, Matt. I will stop the recording. This is kind of stop recording.